Here we go. Good afternoon. This is a hearing of the Chatham Conservation Commission being held on March 1st, 2023, in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Chatham Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Regulations. My name is Bob Rawls, and I serve as the chair. Excuse me. Today's hearing is being broadcast live on Channel 18 and is being recorded for the on-demand archives available on the town's website. It's being conducted in person, by phone, and by video conference. The agenda, instructions on how to attend, and copies of documents for review are posted on the town's website. To all participants, whether attending by phone or online, please remain muted unless you have been recognized by the chair. When recognized, please identify yourself for the record. If you're attending by phone, you can mute and unmute by using *6. If you are online and you're not a commissioner, please keep your camera turned off unless you've been recognized. Indicate that you wish to speak by using the raise hand feature. So that we have a record of a quorum, I'll now ask each commissioner to indicate their presence. Vice Chair Bob Delvecchio.
Present.
Janet Williams.
Present.
Karen Latin.
Present.
Mary Sullivan.
Present.
Elise Gordon.
Present.
Cheryl Meservey.
Present.
And I'm here. We have a full house and a quorum. On first Wednesdays, which this is one, we have a hard stop at 4 p.m. due to another hearing in this room. This leaves us 3 hours. We also have a lengthy agenda with 14 items. That means an average of 12.8 minutes per item, not including a break. So accordingly, I'm going to place a timer in front of me, limiting each application to 12 minutes. I will interrupt any presentation that becomes wordy, and we will need to continue any discussion that becomes protracted. So for applicants, please be brief and assume that we have read your materials. We on the commission will also strive to be concise. Nikki Smith, Chatham's conservation agent, will now lead us through the agenda.
All right, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The first is a field change for 42 Black Duck Landing, Thomas and Jennifer Smith, map 1D, parcel B5, SE 103584, removal of an invasive Norway maple. And I believe Teresa Sprague is here for representation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design here on behalf of the Smith family. We're bringing this back to you. If you recall, we had presented this plan back about a month or so ago, and part of our plan was to remove a Norway maple that's located between the house and the street on the slope leading from Black Duck Landing down towards the house. Just before the hearing, the property owners had shared some concerns about removing that maple. They were concerned about losing the shade that Norway maple provides, even though we had recommended that they remove it because of its proximity to the house, because it's very shallowly rooted, and of course it's an invasive tree. At the hearing, I had stated the homeowner's wishes to maintain that maple tree, and then that was recorded in the order of conditions. However, our plan shows the Norway maple tree to be removed. Shortly after the hearing closed, the property owners reconsidered, looked at those roots again, and I'd be happy to show you some pictures of those if you'd like, and decided that they did indeed want to follow our recommendation to remove that Norway maple. So that's why we're bringing this field change request before you. The approved plan does show the Norway maple tree to be removed. However, at that hearing, I had stated the homeowners' concerns and their consideration for saving that tree, and that did make it into the order of conditions. We have done the initial invasive species removal. That has been completed. The area is stable and seeded. That Norway maple remains in place until we get your approval to remove it.
Sure. Thank you, Teresa. That only took 2 minutes. Great. Questions, anyone? Comments, concerns?
Okay. Teresa,
what is the reason? Are they worried about the safety? I mean, it's not leaning, and it's healthy, it's mature. It is somewhat close to the house, but no closer than a lot of other large trees that I see around. Why the concern about this one?
Well, we originally recommended that they remove it simply because it's invasive. We are not, so as part of the invasive species management program, we've removed the invasive vegetation around it, where the area has been seeded, it's going to be planted, and it's going to be not to be disturbed in the future. So no, there will no longer be any mowing around it. There will no longer be any, management or cutting of vegetation around it. So that Norway maple is definitely going to spread. That's why we recommended it be removed. The roots are exposed. I don't know if I can share my screen, if that's possible.
Should be.
Okay, let me, I guess I can share. Okay, so I'm going to share. So I think you should be able to see an image. The Norway maple is on the left. You can see that the roots are exposed. There's a large oak tree just to the right, and you've rightly pointed out, Janet, that it is in similar proximity to the house as the Norway maple. If I go back and look, those are the roots of the Norway maple. It's really shallowly rooted. Okay. I don't have any concerns about it going over in the immediate future, but because it's invasive, because we would recommend to remove it for that reason, I think it's best to remove the tree now rather than do it later after we plant all of that new native vegetation that's going to be planted around it.
Okay, just to be clear, that we've had this conversation in other properties recently, and somebody put their finger on it when they said the nature of whether something is invasive has a lot to do with the context in which it exists and the environment with which it exists. So are you saying then that because this has been in an area that has been regularly mowed and tended, the saplings that would have spread from that tree have been kept down, and once you plant this with new native vegetation, those saplings were free to come and take over? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is definitely a concern, okay. Yes. And Norway maple seeds. It doesn't sucker like white poplar or locust, but it seeds heavily into areas that are unmanaged, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so the proposed replacement is grasses and forbs?
We have a number of shrubs. Again, I can share the plan just as a reminder. Let me see. I have the plan open. So we do have a number of shrubs that are being planted into that area. It's just very much on the edge of the 100-foot buffer zone. It's literally the blue line you're seeing is the 100-foot buffer. The Norway maple was not located on the survey plan, so we're showing the approximate location, but it's just at the edge of the 100-foot buffer. I do know that this area is an area that is definitely has some aesthetic components for the property owners. They want it to look nice from their house looking out onto it and from Black Duck Landing. There's a number of hydrangeas that are currently located to the north of the driveway. They are asking us if we could possibly transplant them into this area outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, where they will be shaded by that existing oak tree, so not require quite so much water. We do have a number of native shrubs that we're replanting in the area just on the eastern side, so the northeastern side of the property. And then the rest of that area will be seeded with some shade-tolerant grasses and wildflowers. So yes, there are a number of shrubs that are being replanted, and there is that large existing oak as well as an existing pitch pine. You can see there's a pitch pine just to the north, an oak, and then there's another oak tree, pitch pine, et cetera, to the south. So it's a well-canopied area.
Okay.
Anybody else?
We want an oak tree.
Quick, Teresa. Yeah, I'm in favor of removing it. I see that it's competing with the large oak and the small oak on the other side. So I think if you remove that, the other trees will flourish a little bit more. And you are keeping that smaller oak, right, on the other side of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the native trees are all remaining, yes.
Yeah, and we talked about a replacement tree the last time when you weren't here. Is there any way you could plant a replacement somewhere else?
Well, we have a total of, additionally, we have 12, 13, 14, 15 additional trees being planted back in that area. So even just to the south along that side, again, because of crowding, I think it's appropriate to plant that area where we're removing the Norway maple with shrubs and understory, so a ground cover and a shrub layer. Where very little exists, there is some gray owl juniper, although some of that has been removed as part of the construction. So I don't know if planting a tree back in that area because of crowding would make a lot of sense.
But maybe not in that area, but somewhere else on the property.
Yeah, I think we, again, if I just share the screen quickly and we kind of look, we're planting this area out really densely with trees, shrubs. It's really to create a thicket. I'm sure we could squeeze another, maybe an amelanchier or maybe even another red maple down along in the wetland area. But we've got quite a bit of vegetation that we're planting back throughout the whole restoration area. And there's an existing, beautiful stand of cherry and red maples that we're interplanting into.
Okay. You sold me. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? You have lots of, Teresa, you have lots of mitigation, more than you need for the project already, as I recall. Is that correct? Yeah, yeah.
That's correct, yes.
So, yeah. I normally would be echoing Bob's sentiment, but I think in this particular case, it seems unnecessary to shove another tree in there. So, since we're time-focused today, we're going to, without further ado,
Make a motion that we approve the field change for 42 Black Duck Landing.
Latin second.
roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Lise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have another field change for 73 Kent Road, Jessica Gao and Philip Chu, map 12J, parcel G4, SE 103480, additional landscaping.
Good afternoon, David Clark. We met 2 weeks ago on this, I believe, and we wanted more details on the landscaping. We provided a landscaping plan that shows that more than 78% of the plantings in your jurisdiction are straight natives. That's it. We're great. We got to get through these.
Questions, anyone? Okay, go ahead, Jen.
No, I just wanted to say on the plan, it says 78%, native foundation plantings
Yeah.
within the resource area and 100% outside of the foundation. Got it. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
All right.
Just had a comment, David, on the planting list. You have clethra, you have Ilex glabra, inkberry, you have some other ones here that are native, but maybe the cultivar is not native, but can you kind of get into detail about that, why the...
I can't.
Okay.
No. But if
All right.
the commission wants straight natives, no cultivars, we can.
Well, they're not listed as native on the list, but they are as far as I'm concerned, but got about 3 or 4.
I will jump in.
Yeah.
Bob, on this one, some of the ones identified as natives also appear to be cultivars.
Yeah, right.
So usually,
Which one are they all?
uh,
Never mind.
usually if there's something in quotes, it's got a name, it usually indicates that it's a cultivar of some kind. So I would ask that if, for the natives especially, that they be straight
Okay.
natives, not cultivars. As far as the, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob, sorry.
But that's all I had.
Okay. I do have a question. The 78% figure, is that number of plants or percentage of area?
Plants.
Number of plants?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you've got a bunch of grasses, so, et cetera, each of those would count the same as a large shrub. So it seemed like maybe not the best metric for arriving at the.
Also, we're only talking about the foundation plantings.
All right, so to follow up on that, your narrative said 78% of plants in the resource area. Is that referring to the aura or the NDZ?
The aura.
The aura. And then it said 100% of plants. There were two sentences there that I couldn't figure out. It said 78% of plants in the resource area native, and it also said 100% of plants in the resource area native.
Foundation,
No.
Did it say word foundation?
foundation.
Okay, that's the 100%? Okay,
No, that's 78.
that's 78. So would it be possible, if we can be assured that 100% of the NDZ plants are native, we can assume that, and then we just talked about them being straight native. As far as the outer aura are concerned, can we have a percentage in terms of area that are native instead of number of plants, because that can be extremely misleading.
Sure, whatever you want.
I'm just curious what kind of a burden that puts on people. If you have an area, I don't know, let's say 100 square feet, and are you talking about the size of the plant as it's planted or at maturity?
Maturity, I guess, yeah, when it's all grown up. Because otherwise, you see
Yeah.
my point. You could
Yeah, no, you could-
plant 20 grass forbs and one small shrub and say that it's 95% native.
Right,
I mean.
right. No, I'm just thinking as a practical matter, how
Yeah.
you get the result that we're looking for when we use percentages as we,
The way I'm thinking about it,
doing
maybe I'm not thinking about it correctly, is that it's mature area covered by those plants. Okay, now that
Yeah.
you mention, I guess it might be a little difficult to calculate, but nevertheless, I do think we have a metric problem in general, not just with this particular project. We've seen this in other projects as well. 78%, okay. Hard to interpret it.
yeah. I'm open to ideas.
Yeah, anybody have any comments, question on the?
I think we're going to have to go with the plants because an area is very difficult to, determine since the natives could be, all over the place with non-natives in them. So how do you do an area?
I don't know.
Maybe one way might be, because we didn't think about this when we were revising the regulations and put in the 75%, but we have recognized categories of plants that we use all the time: ground covers, shrubs, grasses, woody, So, I mean, we could break it down and say that the percentages have to be per category.
In other words,
By number.
shrubs would be one
Trees,
category,
grasses.
grasses would be
perennials.
another,
So we're
okay.
gonna have to work on that.
Yeah, we'll have to work on it.
Yeah.
So
But
for this particular.
Luckily, the regulations haven't been done yet, aren't approved.
In our
so-
5 minutes remaining,
Okay.
so are people okay with the proposal as it is?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So you win the day, David, except that there was an ask that you change the cultivar natives to straight natives.
Great, thank you.
And
I was listening to
do we
the,
want to have an
the
updated
meeting
plan
where
for
it
that?
just- No, go ahead, we didn't, yeah.
Oh, what?
Updated plan.
House?
Well, also, I'm not sure one of the natives, one of the hydrangea that's marked native
know,
is
Matt,
truly
Sean,
a
I got-
native. I thought we found out there was only one type of hydrangea that
One-
was native, and I don't think it was that. But
Which one is marked as
That's the
native?
ruby slippers,
The oak leaf hydrangea.
The oak leaf is a native.
yeah.
The one listed on the plan as being native is an oak leaf
Oh,
hydrangea.
that is?
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Oh,
Thank you.
all right.
interesting.
confirm that, okay.
We'll put in the order, David, that the natives will be straight.
No order, this is a plan.
I mean, the, whatever,
Field change.
the field change, I'm
There's-
sorry.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we approve the field change with the additional landscaping, maybe a little bit of a revision on that, for 73 Kent Road.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
I vote aye. All right, we gained 4 minutes on that. All about the minutes. Next, please.
All right, the next item up is the request for determination of applicability for 55 Strong Island Road, Robert Stello, Stello Construction Incorporated, map 12M, parcel 17B18, rebuild existing deck and retaining wall under the deck and remove the outdoor shower.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield rather than Bob Stello. With me is Dan Croto, and we recognize your time constraints and that you have read the accompanying material. This is a very, very small change to an existing deck. It actually results rebuilding the existing deck with a slight reconfiguration, which I believe results in a 22 square foot reduction in coverage. And if there are any questions, either Dan or I would be happy to answer them, but it's a fairly simple process for which we're seeking your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Litchfield. Anyone have any questions, comments?
I got something quick.
Okay,
Where the outdoor shower will be removed, what will be in place of that at ground level?
Dan, would you?
is that a,
Good afternoon. Right now, surrounding that is grass, so can certainly plant it with whatever the commission wanted. It's a definitely an area that doesn't get much sun. So the idea was just to go with conservation mixed grass. But I think they'd be open to planting. If the request was for a couple of native plants, I think they'd be fine with that too.
Yeah, we would have no, if there's something that is, would be well suited to that north side with a very, very limited amount of sun, I'm sure the Richardsons would be happy to, I don't know if mitigation is really required for this, but would happy to plant something there.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful as far as I'm concerned. This is an RDA, so maybe the agent could specify some plantings in that area?
We'd have no objection to that.
Okay. Thank you.
anyone else? Seems like this is a straightforward ask, and I don't think I don't sense anyone resisting approving this as a negative determination. Any conditions? Just the planting?
Yeah, erosion control too. It's on a slope, I know, going down to the water. Maybe some erosion control. Were you planning on that as well?
I think Dan has that straw wattle base with a silt fence between the project and the top of the coastal bank. It's on the second page of the narrative, but that will be included in the work.
Okay.
Yes, it is on the plan that there's going to be straw wattle and silt fence, and then pretty much a standard condition is always that any disturbed areas are revegetated with native grasses. But I can add in that if we want some shrubs as well, I can add that in, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
At the rinsing station location, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
The area where this work is pretty flat because then there's the block wall at the coastal bank.
Okay, so what's the, Nikki, what's the motion here?
a negative, approve a -2 determination. Or, no, -3, sorry.
Okay.
Make a motion that we approve a -3 determination of applicability for 55 Strong Island Road.
Latin second?
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl, and I vote aye.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Litchfield, if I could, to save your time, and since there was already reference to the removal of the outdoor shower, would the commission consider moving forward in its agenda to the very last item, which is a request for a certificate of compliance for an old order pertaining to this property?
I was just about to open that one. So we will, because yes, that makes sense. So the certificate of compliance for the same property, sorry, I have to pull up the agenda again. So 55 Strong Island Road, again, SE 10-2316 for a certificate of compliance to complete the landscaping.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, the very simple and brief explanation is that an attorney, thank God not I, missed this outstanding order when the Richardsons purchased the property, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. They were unaware of it until they filed the RDA, and Crystal said to Dan, hey, before you do this, you got to do that. It was an unpleasant surprise, and we also determined that aside from the outstanding order, there was an unpermitted rinsing station. It was probably done, we know it was done by the prior owners, and the Richardsons are happy to have that removed. Mr. Whiteman has provided you a very thorough summary of the current situation. We're simply looking to close out somebody's error from 20 years ago or whenever it was when this was first issued and never closed.
All right, so the rinse station would come out, and what what was the other change?
Essentially none.
No, just the landscaping. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think if your clients are amenable to removing the rinse station, it's always, is it in the NDZ?
I think
sorry?
probably
Is
is.
it in the no disturb zone, the rinse station? Or what?
Yes, definitely is.
Okay, yeah.
Within
Right,
Coastal Bank.
all right, so yeah, that would be attractive to us. So how do we, is that, Nikki, something that you would put on the COC?
Yes, yeah, I can, between the two projects, the RDA and the COC, I can put a cover letter on both of them, just explaining, so for future reference, it's clearly stated in a letter that the rinse station is to be gone and native plantings are to be in its place, and they get the COC, pending that the rinse station is gone.
All right, very good. All right, other comments? All right,
Make a motion that we approve the certificate of compliance for 55 Strong Island Road.
Latin second?
roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Cheryl, and I vote aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You got two done in the allotted time. For one. You got the two done in time for one.
Yeah. And a dog.
And a dog. I'm not sure. All right, Nikki. You're still with us.
Sorry, I
Oh,
did
there
the
we go.
whole intro and my mic was.
Oh, okay.
So we have the request to amend an order of conditions, 110 Seashells Drive. Kevin and Patricia Berry, map 1A, parcel 2S1, SE 10-3444, repairs to the existing fiber rolls. And I believe this is the phase 2.
And Catherine Ricks here with Coastal Engineering. I think we were going to go through a draft amended order on this one today because we had approved it last time,
Yeah, I think that
but I didn't see it on the website.
I think that we messed up on this one. So,
Yes, I would say that is correct. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I didn't see the amended order, but I'd say, I mean, there's only a couple conditions that can probably just be grabbed from the previous order that the fiber rolls were on, that were approved on, and just grabbing those two and then adding in what we had discussed last time about no wire encased fiber rolls.
right,
I think that would cover it. The two other conditions I'd say that could be included in the amended order is installation of the fiber rolls between October 15th and April 15th, which was one of the DMF requirements, and then a required minimum annual nourishment of 364 cubic yards over the fiber rolls was also in that between March 1st and April 15th. I think those are the only ones that really would aren't in the current order of conditions.
yes, apologies, I think it fell through the cracks here for some reason. So we can craft it, we could, I think, Nikki, can we slip it into the next hearing next week?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, it should be, so it was just time of year, and then you said 354 cubic?
The OOC 102154 had 364 cubic yards over the fiber rolls annually. Now, the active order right now has 10,000 cubic yards, but that's going all the way up to mean high water. So, and that's not like an annual nourishment. This is just a minimum annual to cover the fiber rolls that was in the last one. So I would say that's something to keep the fiber rolls covered would be part of the maintenance of the fiber rolls. That's not in the current order.
All right, and then get rid of the time of year, the nourishment, and then get rid of the metal casing.
Yeah, the wire encased ones, which I don't even know if you can purchase those anymore. I don't know where, they always buy the other ones now that just have the fiber.
Yes, so that would be very easily draftable for the next hearing. And I can send that out or put it on my town gov before the hearing so everyone can see it.
Okay,
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue 110 Seashells Drive to the next hearing on March 8th, 2023.
Latin second.
roll call vote, Mary,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
All right, so then we have the request for an order of conditions for 4 Nickerson Circle, Justin Baker, North Coast Development LLC, map 4D, parcel D1, construction of a dwelling.
David Clark Engineering for the record. We were about to issue the order last week and didn't have time to look at the landscape plan and the revised site plan that had the changes to the site coverage calculation, so I believe you have those now. The revised site plan shows that there's no increase in the aura because we moved the house outside the aura.
Very good, yes, thank you. And have you seen the new revised order?
No.
Okay. Seems like you need to see it. You're probably happy with it. I think it's straightforward
Well,
at this point.
I thought it was straightforward the last time.
Okay, yeah, it's not changed much. Basically, all
Yeah.
the comments that were there
Yeah.
were folded in, I believe. Elise, go ahead and summarize if that's true, as Elise handled this one. I just made a couple of very small,
Yeah, I think he made changes to the findings more than anything else, right?
correct,
Yeah.
yeah. It's very straightforward, it's a minimal impact, and basically planting a tree, one native Tupelo, right? Yep. The hard work was done when you moved it out of our jurisdiction. So, I think we can go ahead and,
Just had one question.
Okay, sure, Bob.
David, the slate, you say it may not be on the applicant's property, could be on state property?
It could be, yes.
Yeah.
But we don't have a problem with a condition that if it is on an applicant's
Okay.
property.
and that's,
it would come
that's
out.
in there.
Yeah,
It says if it is on the applicant's
Yeah.
property that it should be removed.
okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the order of conditions with the changes noted for 4 Nickerson Circle.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Oh, we're cranking it out here. I'm going to increase the time.
All right, the next one is the notice of intent for 299 Cranberry Lane, Timothy F. Ryan, map 15K, parcel 77, SE 103594, redevelopment of property, new house, guest house, septic, sports court, and land management plan.
This is on your time.
Hi, Thad Eldridge, East Southeast, here with Paul Muldoon. I've just handed out a paper that just shows a profile of the stairs to go in, along with an example of where similar stairs have gone in. I checked my notes this morning and said, oh yeah, I need to do that. So, sorry about it being late. The more important one, though, Paul Muldoon was able to rotate the proposed garage. That's a 4-degree rotation that gets about 3.5 feet at the far end of bank preservation. It also forced the driveway to shift over, which opens up more space on the north side of the driveway. To get the turnaround to work, we had to shift the sports court. And in order to make the shed work, we had to flip that to the other side. The tree that exists out there that we were concerned about, that shed getting very close to, it's no longer very close to it. So saving that tree becomes easier. We have a new landscaping plan, and that's about it. Are there any questions?
Well, thank you, very good. Questions?
Okay. I guess I'm looking at the original plan and the revised plan and trying to understand what rotate the garage means, because it looks to me to be in the exact same position and configuration. I
And
see a shift in the driveway, but I don't see any change.
could we get the site plan on the screen? I'm not sure who's controlling.
Nikki?
Thank you, Nikki. So right in
Tell me
here.
when, this one?
Yes, that's great, thank you.
Okay.
Right in here was the hinge point, and so this shifted out by 3.5 feet.
3.5 feet, okay, that's why it's hard to detect, okay.
Yeah, it's,
At this scale, it is hard to detect, but at this scale, it's hard to detect. We did save about 18 inches of grade height against the structure as we peeled this back, and we retained the bulk of that wing and the patio outside of the flood zone on the opposite side. So that was important to us to maintain that separation. And then reorganizing, re-angling that driveway, shortening the driveway run, minimizing the parking and turnaround.
Can you estimate how much it has been reduced, the driveway areas? Anyway,
we can provide that number.
The adjacent retaining wall that sits on the left-hand side as you pull towards that single-car garage dropped by about 18 inches in height, and also shortened by almost 20 feet. So we've significantly reduced that retainage along the edge of that parking area.
And then Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers in
That's,
front of me.
yeah, that's okay. Just want to, at some point, if you can get them to
Sure.
Nikki, because it would be good to cite to that in the order that you made these efforts to address the concerns that the commission had. Does any of that save any of the trees on that bank that were slated to come out? Or are they all still?
They're all still slated to come out. If anything can be saved at the time, we will, but
I think we're a little bit more confident with the trees closest to that retaining wall. And again, that'll be a segmented concrete block retaining wall that doesn't have a deep footing. It's 12 inches of crushed stone just below the surface. So we're not digging a big footing and building up a concrete structure. It's stacking essentially concrete block in front of those locations.
And just to re-mention it, we have a significant amount of mitigation on this site that it's double digits to 1 mitigation, so it's a.
It is healthy mitigation, acknowledged. But we always try to do what we can to save things. So what are you going to mulling us over, or is this a thumbs?
I'm not.
You're not ready to put a
yet.
thumb up or down?
No, those are the ends of my questions.
Okay, all right, very good. Anybody else?
I just have a question for Teresa. The landscape lighting, is that going to remain the same?
Yes, and we've discussed that, by the way, Teresa Sprague, Blue Flags Design here on behalf of the property owners. So the landscape lighting will be minimal. It's just foot lighting along the pathway. There'll be no sports court, will not be lit up. There'll be no floodlights, nothing, no uplighting at all. It'd just be basic foot lighting just for safety.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? I think I was the one who originally asked about rotating, and obviously, probably both Jen and I would be happier with a larger rotation, but I'm sensing from your materials that you're running into other constraints if you try to rotate further. Is that, am I saying your words for you there when I say that?
We have a floodplain going right in front of the building that we're trying to avoid.
Yes.
So we've gone to great effort to bring the building out of the floodplain where it currently exists within. The garage is currently within the floodplain. We're taking that out. And moving this any further forward, we're pushing right up against it.
Yep. So we should feel that we got all we could get in terms of rotating that wing in practical terms. You can nod yes if that's true.
We're very comfortable with the solution. Yes. Yes, we're comfortable with the solution.
Okay. Are we comfortable with the solution? Janet's muttering over here, so I just don't know.
Given the mitigation.
Given the mitigation, I mean, we can run into this a lot where we're offered buku, copious amounts of mitigation that overcome a number of sins. And usually it's on the larger projects, larger properties, you know, the deeper pockets, shall we say. And sometimes it seems a bit, inequitable. But nevertheless, it is what it is. And it is certainly a lot of mitigation. I think last time, or at one point I asked Teresa if we wind up with everything native on this property. I think your answer was yes to that, Teresa, which is a good thing to say, but a property so complex and so large. So I'm willing to go along with it personally.
Work session? Yep.
Work session, yeah.
Okay.
When is the next work
22nd.
session? 22nd? March?
March or February?
We're in
Today's March 1st, isn't
Oh,
it?
thank you. I'm still writing 2022 down.
Would you like February 2024?
It's been 2 weeks last 2 years.
I make a motion that we continue 299 Cranberry Lane to the next work session on March 22nd, 2023 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Before we proceed, you've got your zoning and everything under control?
We're preparing to file that very shortly.
Preparing to file.
Mr. Litchfield is spearheading that effort in an effort to maintain consistency and printing out 13 sets of documents. We now have
Okay, well,
an agreed-upon plan.
I would like to
Okay.
I would like to propose a pause on this motion because we've had a couple instances recently where we worked diligently on an order of conditions and then to have the project shot down by zoning. This is, to me, potentially, it's a complex project. Who knows what's going to happen? I would propose that we, as we sometimes do, send a letter to, is it just zoning that we're talking about? Saying that we're prepared to write an order of conditions for this. We are, how is the phrasing, Nikki? We are.
It's approvable with.
Approvable with conditions, that's correct. But
Yeah,
let's hold off. Go ahead.
I'm kind of thinking maybe we can still do the order at our next work session, but maybe not issue it until zoning,
But we still have to
to
do
make
all,
sure that zoning doesn't have any major changes or
but
anything.
we still have to do all the work.
Yeah.
And,
That's true.
and we've been burned. And I personally, for this particular project, think it's a bit risky. I don't know what your prospects are, but it's a big project,
It's a big project.
complicated.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Litcher, what do you think?
If I could, very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I understand the commission's concern, and it's one that we have as well. There is, of course, not the ability to do any project like this until all required approvals are in hand. And I appreciate the fact that you don't want to spend unnecessary time on the matter, but by the same token, we thought, given the scope of the project, it was sensible to wait until we had your approval before filing with ZBA, because if there had been other changes other than those that you saw today, that would have necessitated filing with new plans with the ZBA. So it's a difficult situation for you, but it's also difficult for the applicants. So I sympathize with the concern that you expressed about spending the time writing the order, but by the same token, there's really no perfect solution for the applicant either. One could say that we were being courteous and waiting until you approved the site plan before filing that to the ZBA. Perhaps Crystal's or Nikki's suggestion might make sense, but I certainly defer to you.
Thoughts? I still think,
I'd prefer sending that letter that we usually send to zoning saying that at this point, we don't have an issue, whatever the wording was.
provable.
And then, once it's gone to zoning and they've approved it, we can write and issue the order. Because it's a large project. This is going to be some decent work to write the order.
Agreed.
Not a little quick.
No, it's not.
I would agree with Karen, 100%. I think it's important when it's this complex that we only have to go through the full order a minimum number of times.
Okay. Thoughts over here? Nods.
I agree with Karen.
All right. Jan's nodding. Okay, I think,
So could we continue it till the April?
you don't have a filing date, right?
No.
We'd probably be heard on April 27th.
So we'll
And
continue
then
to
that would be
May.
the earliest that we would be able to issue an order, would be post that hearing,
Correct.
knowing what kind of reception they're getting from the ZBA. Yeah, I think the April,
So April 27th there.
is that what it is?
So our work session's the 26th, but
Oh,
That's too bad.
maybe, maybe we could.
That creates a problem, yeah.
27th. We maybe could put it into May 3rd, which is a hearing.
All right, give me what are the odds What are the odds you guys are going to meet resistance? Do you have any sense of it at all?
We've been working with the neighbors pretty closely.
Yeah.
True. Do you think zoning will have any issues? Personally?
It's too much to ask, I guess.
I know.
Bill logged
The
off.
schedule doesn't work for us. I think if if the timing was different, we maybe could push it off. I'm not sure that we can then string you along for an extra month after the zoning hearing. So I think we had to take a risk.
We could prepare the order for the 26th work session and then hold it until
May 3rd.
the May 3rd hearing to be sure before we issue
Yeah,
it.
we could do that.
Right, because the worst situation is where we have issued an order and then they have
That
to
makes it
redesign.
even more complicated if it's on the books.
Right.
It's hard to, it's more work to undo it. Thoughts on that from the
It's
applicant?
certainly acceptable to us, Mr. Chairman. Again, we understand the dilemma. There's no perfect solution when you work with multiple boards, and we appreciate your concern.
Right, yes, thank you. It seems like, though, everybody wants conservation to go first for some inexplicable reason to me. I think zoning kills more projects than we do, so they should go first. So where does that leave us? We're going to the next work session?
April
April
26th.
26th, not,
And please do a good job with zoning.
Do our best.
And if we have trouble, maybe I'm right with the February. If we run into trouble at zoning, maybe I'll be right with the February date.
yeah.
So withdraw the previous motion, and so I'll make the next motion. Continue 299 Cranberry Lane to the next, the work session on April 26, 2023 for an order of conditions.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Lise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And then we're going to have to draw short straws in who writes the order.
But we have a while.
All right, thank you. They're already gone.
The next notice of intent is 35 and 43 Sears Road, Mahalo Realty Trust, map 12A, parcel 1312 and 14I1, proposed coastal bank stabilization.
Good afternoon. For the record, Seth Wilkinson, Wilkinson Ecological Design. I'll just get the plan up here. So this is a fairly straightforward fiber roll project at 35 Sears Road. You've been seeing us a fair bit in the last year or two along this extended shoreline. I think as this changes in the tidal cycle and the hydrology and the larger estuary, sort of primarily in relation to the changes in the inlets and the inlet locations and formation, there's sort of a period of equilibrium, and there's been a fair bit of disturbance along the shoreline and the primarily instability of the coastal banks. So this site is just adjacent to Battlefield Road to the right if you're facing the water, or the west. There's a little stairway which actually our clients, the Cassidys, had installed for the benefit of the public. That had always sort of been like a runoff problem as the water cascaded off the road and sort of scoured out that area. And they worked with the town to put that in. That's been working quite well. So it began as just a low fiber roll array, just 3-foot high fiber roll array. which would run along the coastal bank, sort of just behind where again, the Cassidys have voluntarily put a dinghy rack in for the benefit of the public. And it would run behind that, and at the more western end of the property, the bank increases in elevation. And so we would step that fibril array up. It'd be easier to look at this in cross-section. To 4 and then ultimately 5 at the far west end, just sort of following the grade. For those of you that remember 212 Sears Road, which is just on the western side of the Sears Road landing, we sort of followed a undulating coastal bank there and did a low fibril array and then no fibril array in certain areas depending on the height of the embankment. So we're essentially following the same approach there. The anchoring methodology would be typical to other projects that you've seen. We'll be restoring the area with native plantings, primarily American beach grass in the vicinity of the fibrils, and then above the fibrils, we'd be using Carolina rose, bayberry, beach plum, and our typical Cape Cod native meadow mix to restabilize everything. Just for the big picture, for the benefit, this is also subject to a larger, probably close to 8-year-old, Steve? 8-year-old restoration? More like 11. So about 10 years ago, we restored the wetland behind the coastal bank that was significantly invaded with Phragmites and also some invasive vines, as I recall. But this is sort of subject to a large-scale and very successful ecological restoration project. This site in general, the clients have been great stewards, have worked very closely with the town for the benefit of the public and the coastal access there. So we're excited just to sort of maintain the ecological integrity of this site. And with that, I'd be more than happy to answer questions. I can also put some images up if that's helpful.
Thank you, Seth. I think we'll just move into questions and comments.
Okay.
Anybody?
I've got a few questions, Seth. The bayberry on the top of the bank there is pretty exposed, it's pretty uprooted. Was there any thinking about adding anything to the root system of those, just to kind of?
The existing?
Bayberry, yeah.
Yes. So with the existing, when we stabilize with the fibrils, we do try to create a nice natural condition. Might actually be best shown on the site visit and the site plan on the cross section. So we are proposing to sort of bring that nourishment back and interface with the bayberry. As you point out, you don't want a lot of air down there. So that is, I didn't focus on that in my presentation, but that is part of the design to recover those root systems. And again, with that stability it's created with the fibrils, below that, there shouldn't be nearly as much movement. Obviously a storm can get over that and potentially scour the sand away, but this would be on an annual nourishment cycle like all other projects and as specified in the design plans. So I think it would be addressed not only at the time of construction, but after.
Okay, and the other question I had was the outfall pipe, the drain pipe. That's really exposed right now, so is there any plan to bury that, or I think it's kind of like a safety hazard right now. It's sticking up completely, maybe, the diameter of it.
Yeah, that's, I believe that's associated with the drainage of the town, but possibly the wetland. A lot of times you don't know the origins of these pipes, but as you can just barely see there is some water flowing out of that. We do regularly see that. So certainly we could add some sand. It's always, you want to be careful, you don't want to bury them. obviously, because that could restrict flow. But we can absolutely cover that more, and then even maybe, I see a few rough areas of the plastic, sometimes you just sort of shave that off, just so, for safety reasons, so no one's tripping or cutting themselves on it, but we could certainly do that in conjunction with the work.
You wouldn't want to add any stone around that, would you? Or would that present another problem? Around the outlet?
Yeah, I'd really want to check with Ted Keon on that, before proposing something like that. There can be pros and cons to adding some stone, and I just wouldn't want to make the problem worse, but be happy to consult with the town on that. I think we're right on the boundary. I don't actually know if that's right on town or private property there. It's not sure if it shows up on the plan or not.
The existing.
Okay, that's all I had for now, thank you.
Thank you.
Bob?
Is that deck that's right above the bank, is that permitted?
I believe so. It's certainly been there throughout our work with the property, which is over a decade. Yeah, it's been there. It's been on there a long time, but I don't know specifically. I wasn't involved with it. Predates my work with this property.
I think maybe we should just make sure it is, because we've had others come before us for decks right above banks, and
Yeah, I saw the deck too, and I think as a practice, we tend to just check into them. Is it possible, Nikki, for you to check the files?
Yeah, so it's the thing marked wood platform on the site plan.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Says deck to remain.
I'm thinking of another one that we're talking about later, that I did have someone check in on the deck, but I missed this one, I guess. So, yeah, we can check in and see if it's, in general, if it's from the 70s and there's some sort of proof, I kind of say, well, we kind of let it go at that point. But if it was, built in, 5 years ago or something, then we'll have an issue. But I will look in to see if we have any site plans or if Google Earth shows it being there for a significant amount of time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It should also show up on some of the prior restoration
Right.
site plans, if that's helpful.
Sure.
So humor me. What happens if we do nothing? I mean, isn't that wetland back there meant to absorb the ocean coming in? What happens if we just do nothing?
Always a good question. I think the breach would likely occur closer to that eastern property line where the stairs are. That's the low point. So if that continues to erode, then I would expect there to be impacts to that freshwater wetland. It really is a question of its intensity. You can see right sort of near that blue square there, it does get quite close. And so, freshwater wetlands generally don't do well with salt. The other thing that could occur is just a draining of the wetland. At some point with sea level rise, it would fill back up with salt water and might transition to a more of a salt marsh type community, or at least a salt tolerant community. But given the elevations I'm seeing, might be some time before that happened. But generally speaking, as a matter of sort of ecological restoration on the practical side, we try to preserve freshwater wetlands as long as possible, and the same for saltwater wetlands. You try to. It's obviously been like this for a long time, and we have actually done a number of projects over the years where we have protected that breach so that they can. It's very disruptive. Saltwater is very disruptive to a freshwater-dominated wetland, and they'll eventually equalize, but it can be a temporary loss of habitat, and this is a really high-quality habitat at this point with a lot of diversity, which could eventually be restored to salt, but there would be a multi-year or decadal transition. So I think there's some significant benefits to preserving it as freshwater wetland.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, following up on that, so the existing condition site plan does indicate that coming back to the drain pipe in the freshwater wetland, is on that property, draining a ditch that runs through it. And I guess my question is, why, when this was done, this project, why would you ditch and drain a freshwater wetland?
I don't have the answer to that. It's probably an overflow. It certainly long predated our involvement as well. It could be as far back to cranberry agriculture. Sometimes it can be many, many decades. It appears to be more of an overflow, and this is documented. Sort of, this is tied back to that closest point in the wetland. Doesn't mean there isn't a T. We do see that, that would connect to some other sort of surface drain. Based on this plan, it looks pretty clear that it's a straight line right to the wetland. But it's pretty small diameter pipe. I think it was around 6 or 8 inches, and probably serves as an overflow to.
Well, what would happen if it was removed?
Yeah. Is it needed?
You'd have to really do a hydrological study for something to determine that. I'm really not prepared to answer something like that, because I don't know what the flows are.
Right, but I would just have, I guess I would have thought that was examined when that project was permitted 10 years ago, that there was an existing ditch going through it that drained into a pipe, and why was that left in place?
Yeah, the focus was more on the restoring the plant community. The hydrology didn't seem to be at the heart of the ecological issues with the wetland, and I think the last decade has sort of proven that out, because it has restored as a very healthy wetland community. And again, I'm not necessarily against it. It's just that it tends to be a pretty extensive study to determine if you close it off. You can do things. You can have unintended consequences like interfering with adjacent septic systems, flooding areas, potentially off property. As you can see from the site plan, it's relatively low-lying in this area. So we generally resist changing hydrology that's been in place for decades, unless there's really a known problem from it.
There's no doubt that wetland is functioning very well at the moment, so I guess it's just in my experience when I see ditches and drains put into freshwater wetlands, it's because they're trying to get the water out of there and convert it to some other use. But I do have another question about the vegetation on the bank. There's the narrative opens with a statement that the upper bank is vegetated with predominantly native species, but there are references in the notes about the removal of invasive vegetation, and in the alternatives analysis, it also mentions the possibility of invasive vegetation taking over. So my question is, of the vegetation that's currently on the bank, predominantly native, how is anything being removed from the bank?
We're not proposing to remove any vegetation at this point. This is really just a stabilization project, and we'd want to be vigilant and make sure that there wasn't any disruption in the future with the plant community. But it's a fairly intact plant community, so we're just looking to preserve that. But there isn't any. I can go back to the cross section.
Okay, I think there was a reference to, and I could be confusing this with another one of the projects we have today, but to flush cutting some of that vegetation. Yeah, there is. Okay, so some of those, the native shrubs that are overhanging are to be flush cut and
Allowed to regrow.
Yes, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Yes, that's really just to, they're starting to sort of tip, and we're looking to get plenty of light down there, so that's just sort of a restorative technique that has shown to work quite well in situations like this. We don't have to do it, but I think it will rejuvenate those plants.
That's
and-
fine, rejuvenation pruning is fine, but, okay, I just wanted to clarify that there's no other vegetation to be removed.
Yes, that's
Okay. And the seasonal rollout mat, does that go up and over the fiber array? How does, people are going to be walking on top of it, is that?
Yes, you've probably seen them. They're just wooden slats
Yeah.
that are, yeah.
I've never seen it go up and over a fiber.
Yeah. It's just a nice, simple alternative to a more structural stairway, and it's a gentle enough slope that we thought that would work in this instance. And it's also seasonal, which is nice.
Okay. The slope would have to be pretty gentle. Are you thinking, is it 2-to-1? Because there was a reference to 1.5 and another reference to 2.
Yeah, the fiber rolls themselves, but then you lessen that slope as you add the material over the surface. You can sort of see it in the cross section. This is the 1.5 to 1. But then as you add material at the bottom, you're lessening that slope. It's probably in the neighborhood of 3-to-1, maybe even 4-to-1 when it's all said and done.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, comments?
Just another quick one. I know you were running out of time. The health of the salt marsh, how is that? And is it providing a positive impact for that area?
Yes, there's a fringing marsh. Let me see if I've got any. I don't think I have great imagery of that. This is another one of these heavily used areas. You can see a pretty extensive tie-up there in that image. Another angle of it there. This and the Cassidy's also, with the exception of like large parties, they allow public access on the beach. So they're looking to sort of continue that activity and not fill up some of this area with salt marsh. So that there really haven't been many discussions about that with them. But I would say the fringing marsh that exists on parts of this shoreline is as healthy as anywhere else on the beach, and so we're not proposing anything at this time. In the future, if we see a decline, we might come back and see you and talk about that. But they're just looking to focus in the upland at this point, and also, avoid that extensive permitting process that requires work below mean high water. We've discussed before, Chapter 91 process.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? We're out of time, unfortunately. We're getting there. I have the same concern about the outfall pipe. I don't know why. It seems like it should be related to the prospects for your project. And so I would think, Nikki, if you could also see whether there's any record of why the pipe is there. Do we have any record at all of it? It appears to be.
Yeah, I can look into it, but most of the time with really old pipes like that, there's no.
It very well
record of
may,
anything.
yeah, it may very well may be a grandfather type of thing, but I think it behooves us to check into it. I mean, when I looked at
Do
the.
we have a start point and an end point for the pipe of maybe perhaps an address that it would be permitted under?
It's a little hard to say because it looks like it's sort of.
I think it's primarily on 35. I think it would be all on 35
Yeah.
Sears, if I had to guess.
And
Yeah, my guess is it's pretty old, but I will look.
probably is, but just due diligence. Because it doesn't seem like it's doing anything good. From an ecological perspective, at least that seems to me. So if there's some way, if there's an opportunity there to address it, then we should take it.
Yeah, we tend to just be, as I mentioned before, be cautious around pipes because if there isn't sort of a demonstrated problem from the pipe, making a change to that in recognition of all the other changes that have likely happened surrounding the pipe over the decades, there's sometimes unintended consequences which can be rather.
Well, we can deal with that if the time comes.
Yeah. There may be a way to control the water like at one end so that, if you had a problem down the road, we come back and have a discussion, you know, we closed off the pipe, here's what happened, I think we should, you know, restore some of the hydrology or,
Whatever thoughts you can come up with on that.
okay.
Similarly, when I was walking the beach, it's a very shallow coastal bank there, it's not like this, right? It's like this maybe. And the property is, you can't even see it, it's so far away. So you're normally, you know, so the goals of the project are not necessarily to protect the property, which, you know, some projects like this are for. Is it essentially, what is?
It's more to protect the wetland. Yeah, they've invested significant resources restoring that over time. And there are some portions of their property as you go west, which aren't associated with the wetland that they use and enjoy that little deck area, and there's some existing lawn. They've owned the property for some time, so they're just sort of trying to preserve what they have while also preserving.
Okay, I can accept that. So my only other thought was that, why is the grass mowed to such a width all the way down to the coastal bank from the property? Do you have any understanding of that?
Only that it's been the longstanding practice of the
It's always
family.
been that way?
Yeah, I don't have anything beyond that, unfortunately.
I would, if you have the opportunity to talk to your client about, is all that mowing necessary? It's just not something, obviously, we would ever permit today. And there's another opportunity, perhaps.
Okay.
Make less mowed area there,
Sure.
benefit the environment.
Yeah, happy to inquire.
Or mowed once a year, and, you know,
I don't know, but-
let it turn into a,
Or at least not so, it's like a football, no, it's really
Yes.
wide, really wide. It's a party area, I think, or it could be. I'm not saying it is, I'm saying it could be used as that. Okay.
Just ask, did you do any analysis of what would be the impact if they did nothing in terms of, because there is going to be some harm in doing any work on a coastal bank. So what's the trade-off? Is this, because obviously there's no short-term danger to the property itself.
Right, yeah, I don't feel like there's certainly no threat to any structures or anything like that. We haven't done any formal models or anything like that, but given the proximity of the wetland, I think that's the most compelling issue, is if the land sort of, as you probably noticed, falls back down as it goes towards the wetland. So less erosion than you might think might have the effect of breaching that and considerably changing that wetland ecosystem, not necessarily for the better. And what you can get in a significant surge is you can get some erosion, and you can get some overtopping, and then when the water releases, you can almost like create a channel, which could be really devastating to that wetland. I think any impacts associated with the work would certainly be temporary in nature. There would ultimately be more vegetation and a better habitat in the coastal bank. And I don't think you can really ignore the public use here. We do believe it's been exacerbated in the vicinity of the tie-up. It's very close to the coastal bank, and so having a little bit of reinforced rooting medium for those plants to grow on, I think will help defend against future erosion of that bank. It's just there's always been a heavier public footprint in this start of the beach and the coastal bank interface, so it feels like it's justified there.
All right, so it looks like you have some, go back to your clients to talk about a couple of things. We have some background permits to look for, and so when would you like to return?
What would be the next available?
Well, yeah, next week, which is a bit,
Yeah. And after
that, it's going to be the
April 5th.
5th or 5th?
April 5th.
Yep,
Yeah.
the 5th.
Yeah.
Nikki probably needs more than a week.
Yeah, I was going to actually just.
She probably would, yeah, April 5th
Yeah.
sounds like a bit better for us if it works for you.
Yes, I think if possible, they'd like to try to do the work this spring. So April 5th I don't believe necessarily. If everything was resolved on the 5th, it would then go to the work meeting on the
26th.
26th.
Yep.
We should be able to work with that. That's
Done.
better for you.
All right. Yeah, Bob?
Just, is there a bird, there's not a bird issue, is there, here?
No.
I don't believe so. I don't believe there's a shorebird nesting, like a NHSP, if that's what you're referring
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, time of
Yeah,
year.
yeah. I think I don't believe it's a priority habitat.
Make a motion that we continue 35 and 43 Sears Road to the next hearing on April 5th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, we have to claw back some time.
We were doing well.
We were so good for a while.
Sorry, pulling it up again. 19 Old Wharf Road, 19 Old Wharf Road nominee trust, Michael Ford Esquire, trustee, map 16I, parcel C1, SE 103608, construction of a swimming pool and utility garden area.
Good afternoon, David Clark, Clark Engineering. Also with me is Matt Lautenberger from Wilkinson Ecological, and we have Dan Gordon, the landscape architect, on video. Just quickly, the last time we were here, Commission had a lot of questions and requests from us. To go over those quickly, Commission asked if we could reduce the scope of the project within their jurisdiction. Dan's here to talk about that. A lot of comments regarding the removal of the invasive trees. Matt's here to talk about that. And then there were questions about the mitigation plantings. Both Dan and Matt will also speak to that. In a nutshell, we reduced the project in your jurisdiction from 12.8% of the aura down to 8.7%. And again, Dan will get into the details of how we change things. And so you should be in receipt of the revised site plan, revised landscape plan, and the analysis by Wilkinson Ecological. So,
Have a landscape.
let's go first, Matt or Dan?
Well, since we're concerned about time, I'll just say that my Wilkinson's analysis speaks for itself. If
I think it does, yeah.
any questions about it specifically, I'm here to answer them.
Very good. Yeah, I think we all read it. So we're focusing right now, I think some of us, on whether we have the right site plan. Do you happen to have a date for it?
February
Yeah,
16th.
we don't have that.
No, we don't have it.
Received February 22nd.
We have the vegetation analysis and the planting.
All right, so the three digital people don't have it. Nikki, if you could put it in Dropbox, we'll do a quick look at it.
So I would like to thank you for leaving the trees that didn't need to be removed down near the floodplain, coastal bank.
Cherry trees?
Existing tree. No, they're not.
Is that-
You're leaving the
Are the-
trees,
Are the
correct?
two cherry trees coming out or not?
No, they're staying,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're staying.
yeah, so
So, and I appreciate that the retaining wall was brought in a bit. I still have a real concern about the size. I still have a big concern about artificial grass going in there. And then around where the pull equipment and the generator and the ACs are the trees that are right around there, now that it's smaller, are they now staying? Because I can't imagine there's a reason that you'd need to remove them at this point.
we are
Since you
removing
took
them.
out the shed.
We are still proposing to remove them because they're invasives.
Something is.
Is there a reason?
They're invasives. And that's outlined in the Wilkinson report.
If you'd like me to speak to the ecological impact that the sycamores are having on that area, I'd be happy to.
I think a picture says 1,000 words, and so the analysis was persuasive. context and environment of where it exists,
Yeah.
even though, but, you know, a 24 DBH tree is just hard to part
It's
with, but.
never an easy choice to take down a
I
tree of that
appreciate that.
size, yeah.
We're still looking for the.
We're at a loss here. The site plan, can you describe then the changes to the site plan?
I think Dan was going to, yeah.
Yeah, so would you like me to review the changes to the site plans?
Please, yes.
Do you have a?
Sorry, just real quick, I don't have a new David Clark plan. I only have one dated 1/17, as far as email and,
Well, I could go
Digital.
through the plans that my office prepared. They reflect the changes, the comments that we received and the changes that were made.
Please, yes.
Can you, do you have them you can share on the screen so we can?
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so, this is the site prep, the existing conditions plan, site preparation, existing conditions plan. And it identifies the cherry trees down in this lower area. You can see my screen?
Yep.
It identifies these two cherry trees that are going to remain. And we've also noted on here that there's a pipe that exists that you identified and wanted us to identify that to be removed, which we've identified on this plan as well. And then moving to the proposed conditions plan. Oh, let me just go back. There was a question about the chart down here of trees to be removed. So we've adjusted this to take off the cherry trees, obviously. But the question was, there was some confusion in the hearing about the existing trees to be removed. And then there was a quantity over here, which was the mitigation trees per your criteria. And that's why these two numbers are different. So this has been revised to take off the existing trees to remain the cherries. But we're still proposing to remove 5 of the sycamore maples, which would have a mitigation requirement of 6 trees. So I just wanted to clarify that. And Matt can talk more about the nature of those trees and the condition underneath them and around them. It's all ivy. The trees are populating the whole area with little seedlings, and he can give you the detail on that. Moving to the proposed conditions plan, we added the dimensions here at the pool. So it's 10 feet measuring from the wall. It's a 16-foot pool. And then we reduced this. We pulled this wall back about 1/3 of the way, so that or 7 feet. So now it's 14 feet off the pool. We really tried to minimize that. We also, as we were talking about over here, we deleted the vegetable garden, the shed. We condensed this whole area, reducing the amount of permanent impacts that are in the buffer zone. There were some minor changes to planting over in this area, but still we're keeping the eastern red cedar and winterberry that were proposed in those mitigation plantings. We updated some. Here you can see the resulting changes, that we've reduced the square feet of impervious from 400 down to 430 down to 250, and the amount of artificial lawn area from 710 down to 400. I just wanted to pause here for a moment and just talk a little bit about the artificial turf. So the real benefit of this is that we have something that we can use around the pool that provides really good infiltration and drainage. We don't need to put any impervious surface in those areas. So there is a little bit of
artificial turf here and around the pool. It is, the product we're specifying uses sand, organic certified infill sand as a base and around the turf. 60% of it is plant-based. The backing system is all plant-based soybean material. So it's a very ecological, it's about this, we tried to pick the very best product we can do. And it does have some advantages in terms of providing pervious material around a pool area. So those are some key factors there. I'll let Matt come back to the invasives, the nature of the sycamore maples and some of the benefits of the proposed meadow. But I just wanted to shift here and just go over some of the, just an overview, just a summary of what all of this, where all of this brings us in terms of this proposal. And basically, when we look at the whole buffer area, we're taking, this is all lawn, and there's existing non-native plant materials in these areas. Some of these are the native, the sycamores that are highly invasive, and then we have some native areas down by the resource area down here. What we're proposing is to take out those invasives and restore it all to native plant material, with the exception of a little bit of turf, synthetic turf, and a little bit of impervious at the equipment and at the corner of the pool here. And in terms of numbers, it's really important to get the kind of the full perspective on this, because I think there's, there are some, we are looking to introduce a pool in this area and some other impervious areas. But when you keep it into perspective, the existing condition has 32% lawn within this buffer zone, and we're going to take all of that out. And we have non-native, we have 10% of it's non-native, and we're going to take all of that out. And we currently have 58% of native. We're going to increase that to 97% native meadow and trees and shrubs. That's the huge benefit that we're proposing to offset the impacts of about a percentage of impervious material and 2.3% of our turf area. So I think that those calculations really speak to the proposed improvements. So with that, I am going to pass it back over to you or to David or Matt for any additional comments or questions.
Yes, thank you. I think that was very helpful, at least was for me. So so with the artificial turf, will you not need additional drainage for the pool?
Exactly. That's the benefit, is we don't have to do paving and we have really good infiltration. So we're minimizing impervious.
Okay. So the point of it, is that the purpose?
That's the purpose.
Okay.
We don't want to introduce lawn area because it has its issues of maintenance and all of it, and we know that's not in the interest of your commission. So this is an alternative.
Okay. It's good to know. So it's not a putting green.
No. There's a purpose for it, and we're trying to keep it to an absolute minimum.
All right. Get questions, comments from anybody?
I understand the argument for the artificial turf and the drainage around the pool, but the words artificial turf just,
It makes us
It
queasy.
just-
It makes us queasy, yeah.
even though it's 60% ecological, that means it's 40% plastic.
I prefer to think of it as a patio. And
Impervious patio.
It's pervious patio. When we allow those all the time. I am glad personally that it was reduced. I was able to look at Bob's paper copy, and it was reduced to, I would say, a significant degree, which is good. Makes me feel better about it. I think I see what you did with the garden area and also good stuff. I'm persuaded by your analysis of the sycamore maple propagation. I did a fine job of presenting that. So, what are the questions and comments? Concerns?
Well, I guess, what is the difference between doing pervious patio and the artificial turf?
The artificial turf is significantly higher infiltration rate than a pervious patio surface.
Okay,
Just
it is. All right.
significantly higher.
Is that because on a quote pervious patio, which is really only semi-pervious, the pervious part is only the joints, the stones themselves remain impervious, is that?
Well, you can get pervious pavers,
Yes.
Right.
but the textile that the artificial grass is woven into, it's just the infiltration rate through that versus the pervious paver is just significantly higher, so.
So it's higher than pervious pavers?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
Although,
They should
I mean,
have a better name for it?
well, I don't know, but have they done a life cycle where you look at the generation of the plastic that is obviously used in making the grass, all the way to, compared to the stone that's used in the pervious pavers, to declare it actually more eco-friendly? I don't know, I'm struggling for the words here, but I don't know if you're following
Life cycle
my question.
analysis would change that a little bit because it would have much higher impacts on the manufacturer than mining stone.
Right.
But
The applicant really thought she was doing something good because she spends a lot of time on the West Coast and everything out there is driving people to this type of
because of the drought
surface.
conditions that it's taking over.
For different reasons,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
We have a hard time with change, that's all.
Well, and I have a concern that somebody else will come to us and say, you allowed this,
Well,
so why
The
can't?
question is, are you convinced with the ecological benefits of this approach?
Yeah, I just have a concern. I think we're going to have to be very careful when we write the orders as to why we are allowing this, because I can see somebody else coming and saying, well.
You will be.
Oh, no, you will be.
You will be
I like Mary's question on the life cycle
Yeah.
comparison. I just think that's
I'm just
something
curious.
that's worthwhile.
I mean, we're just not familiar with, or I'm not familiar with artificial turf. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense. And offhand, I'm like, well, why don't you just use sand? But then it'd be a beach, and they wouldn't need a pool, because we have one. No, that's,
But there is a beach right there.
I know, I'm sorry, I know, we don't have to,
Never mind.
Oh, sorry, we're out of time.
we're out of time.
Okay.
Done.
Other comments, concerns, how do we feel about, I will say, I think I'm feeling pretty good about the revisions overall.
Yes.
I came into the meeting thinking, well, they didn't do what I asked. But now I see that you did.
Yeah.
Anything else, anything else that we want to ask for besides what we
Can
received?
they give us information about this artificial turf, just for educational?
Just as a product brochure, you mean?
Just so that we know for in the future, in case that Karen says other people do come in, is there
I
a
think that,
website, is there something?
Look.
Here we go.
Yes, ask and we shall receive.
That would just be great, just for educational.
but I think we have to be careful. It's not really artificial grass that we're talking about here. We're
Right.
talking about a system where it is the top layer of a drainage system, correct?
It's all about presentation.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we understood.
Right.
We didn't understand that previously, which is why
Good point.
we were balking about, on it.
Maybe can you change on the plan to not have the word artificial and put whatever just
Alternative
came up,
drainage system.
whatever it's called, put that, because,
Innovative
Synthetic
drainage
drainage.
system.
yeah, I mean, that is,
nomenclature.
yeah. I know it's silly, but
It's like you're ready to.
it would explain it a little better than artificial turf.
If you could, yes. I think we get it now.
Couple of small things. So is not any manicured turf in the resource area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the other question I had was the uplighting for the flagpole. The lighting on the either side, that's for the, those are for stairs? And then you have a light just for the flagpole?
That's correct.
Okay, is there any way you can move that? So the stair lighting is pretty low voltage type of thing?
Yes, it's low voltage and it's also flush with the paving. It just lights the horizontal surface. There's no uplight, it's completely controlled.
Okay, but the flagpole does have a light that flashes up into the sky, correct, to light the flag?
On the flag.
Is there any way to move that out of the resource area?
The flag or?
The flag.
The light, the uplight?
Yeah, it's just within feet. You're saying move the uplight out of the resource area?
Yes,
Yeah, we could look at that.
because it does interfere with wildlife, you know?
We'll still be lighting the flag, that's all we're trying to do, so. But we can move the light, it's just would just be a few feet back, we'd probably get the same effect, we can do that.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? David, do you feel that you did supply digital copies of the site plan and?
We submitted everything last week, hard copies.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
what
we're just going to
happened.
have, I guess, Nikki, I think you said you couldn't find it, but if you can't, I assume you'll ask for a refresh.
Yeah, I think we have the hard copies, I just don't, the digital copy I have is dated 1/17.
All right, so just something to
I don't
work
know
out.
what happened there,
We need to
but,
have a digital copy before we can finish everything off.
As well as Dan Gordon's updated plans, because we don't have them digitally either.
Right. Something happened somewhere.
I got the
don't get it,
vegetation analysis.
All right, so, sounds like we're not asking for only minor things, puts us in position to go to a work session.
And the next one is
22nd.
22nd. I'll make a motion that we continue 19 Old Wharf Road to the next work session on March 22nd, 2023 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
All right. We have time for a break? Do we need a break?
Could use.
Could use a break? All right, we're going to take 6 minutes. We only have 6 minutes.
Wow, pays to be toward the end of the whole thing,
Well, it does, actually. It may. You're right, I think I'm gonna change it back to.
Yeah, because you know what we have in a few times is Jackson.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to be ruthless on that. Sets the standard.
Yeah. Where? Oh, yeah.
Janet said she might be on there. She'll roll in here. Okay, we're back. Nikki, if you wouldn't mind reading us our next one. Nikki, if you would read.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are on 23 Wood Carver Knoll, Sydney Realty Trust, Julie Moore, trustee, map 11D, parcel 4A, SE 103610, reconstruction of a driveway and construction of a building addition.
Who do we have for Wood Carver Knoll?
Is this David Clark? I think it's David Clark.
Oh, that's you.
I think.
Thank you, John.
Now I can start the timer, all right.
No. So, David Clark, on behalf of the applicant. Last time we were here, Commission had a lot of concerns about the landscape plan. Tom McKay is on the line, who revised the plans, and hopefully you all have copies of that. Primarily, he revised the percentage of plantings to the 75% that you're looking for. So Tom's here to talk about it. If you have questions, I don't think, there's no changes to my plan, so.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's virtual?
Yeah, he's on there. He's got his hand up, so.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead and, is he muted? I can't tell, because I'm not logged in.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Hi. Yep, so per your direction at the last hearing, I revised the planting plan, basically removed a good amount of the non-natives and replaced with native species to hit your requirement, and I updated the planting notes as well.
Okay, that's it. So actually, Nikki, I want to just, for the record, Janet is on a phone call, so she's not going to hear right now, just so you know. So I think I had the same question that I had for previous applicant. When you say, go ahead and describe, your percentage term refers to area or number of plants?
In terms of number of plants proposed.
Yeah. We're going to have to work on that because I think it is, I don't know if you were around when I was talking before about how I think it opens up a little bit of a loophole. But anyway, it's good to know that's what you've done. My issue is that you could put a lot of small plants in there and not much area.
And a lot of your natives are ground cover. They're not shrubs or grasses. So
it's a little hard to know whether, really how much native material is going in there when we talk about percentage in those terms?
Well, if you look at, the project proposes 337 square feet of additional coverage. And for native planting mitigation, I'm showing over 1,500 square feet of native plantings. So that exceeds a 4-to-1 ratio.
Right, right. No, I'm personally thinking that what you have proposed is probably adequate. It's just I'm quibbling, maybe more for the future, that we need to figure out a way of quantifying how much is native in a different way rather than just a percentage of plants. It's just not, I think, a workable metric. That's all.
I have something.
Sure, go ahead.
Within the aura, you have relocated existing hydrangea, and you already have 5 hydrangeas, 2 of which are in the, within the 50 from the coastal bank. Any chance something other than the relocated existing hydrangea could go there?
Yeah, we could, it was literally on the other side of that lawn path, and I just picked it up and moved it up against the house. But we could take that and move it in the back of the yard somewhere outside of the resource area if you would prefer.
I definitely would. I mean, within the 50, we usually ask for 100% native, and you already have 2 other hydrangea that are there that are existing, that are staying, so they're non-native. So I definitely would like to see that move, so thank you.
Yep, no problem. I can make that change very easily.
I don't know that I have anything else right now.
Okay, Bob?
I had a question about the lawn. So will any irrigated lawn remain? I know the lawn is currently irrigated.
In the resource area, I'm proposing drought tolerant microfescue, so it doesn't need to be irrigated.
Okay, and will the existing irrigation be taken up, the underground?
For the lawn areas?
Yes.
Yeah, in the resource area, yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, when you say resource area, I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. What are you talking about?
Within the Aurora upland,
0 to 100?
yes.
Okay.
And I see your notes on the plan. Is there any way you can add no permanent irrigation, lawn irrigation will be in the resource area?
Yes, I can, I'm sorry, I edited it so that it said temporary irrigation. I can
I
make the
see that, but just to clarify, so in case anybody was thinking about, in the future adding it, no permanent.
That's fine. I just assumed that would be clarified in the order of conditions.
Yeah. If you could just add 1 sentence, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else? No? I'm going to quibble a little bit about wait a minute, hold on. I might be thinking of another project. Hold on. So anybody else have a question while I take a look? Nobody? All right. Yeah, I do have my question. When, for the plants that you say are native, some of them look like they could be cultivars. Just wanted,
The Rudbeckia?
there's one. Also the compact ilex. And the Prince William, I read, Serviceberry. I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to tell. I think the general rule of thumb I use, you can correct me if it's leading me astray, is that if it has a name in parentheses, quotation marks, or if it has a, sort of a marketing-friendly name on it, it could be a cultivar, not a straight native. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, sometimes it can be, but these are native species.
Straight native,
Yes.
not.
The Prince William is found commonly in the Northeast, as along with the compact glabra.
In nature.
Yes.
Okay.
But you are correct. Sometimes, when you see it in parentheses, it could be a cultivar.
Right. Okay, well, thank you for that, because wherever we can, as you might expect, we would like to have straight natives, and I'm glad to hear that, at least in your opinion, they are.
In the future, I'll do it differently, so there's no confusion.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? All right. What have we asked for? It was characterize it, Karen, you did a couple of the existing hydrangeas in the NDZ, is that where they were?
There's a relocation of an existing hydrangea that he has said he would move out of the 0 to 50.
Yeah.
There are two that exist that aren't being removed or transplanted elsewhere, but they exist currently, and they're just in the 50. They're 3 are not, well, 3.5 are not, and 1.5 are. I don't know that we can get crazy about that, but he said he'd relocate the one out of the 50.
All right. Did we come up with anything else?
Yeah, and then adding the note about the irrigation.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So those are relatively minor updates to the plan, which I think would put us in position to go to work session.
Make a motion that we continue 23 Wood Carver Knoll to the work session on March 22nd, 2023 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
We'll call vote Mary.
Aye.
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Elise,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is 27 Clamshell Drive, Christopher and Susan Jaquat, map 16A, parcel 30H77. The existing dwelling will be elevated to meet the floodplain requirements. It will be reconstructed and a second floor addition will be added. The driveway will be abandoned and a new driveway installed.
Oh.
Well, I've heard all I need to hear.
My
Sorry, I gotta
assistant
take you
is
home again.
Thad Eldridge, East Southeast, here with the Jacoits. As stated, we're elevating the building. It's just under the requirements for FEMA now. We're going to bring it up to the requirements, reconstruct it. The framing in it is still older framing, doesn't meet the current building code. That will need to be updated. They're proposing a second floor that's half to 2/3 of the building, roof deck over the other part of it, mostly within the same footprint. We do have a projection. There's a bay window being proposed off the southwest corner. The paved driveway that exists over the property line, we're proposing to remove that up to the property line. They're working with a neighbor to augment their permit to remove the rest of it. Proposed pervious driveway will go in on the other side. With the raise of the house, or the elevation of the house, they'll be able to fit a car underneath the building using similar garage doors that are there now. So this does provide them with the 2 parking spaces that are required under zoning. The landscape feature out there, that's the bump, That's going to be inverted. We're going to take the dirt away, and we're going to make a little swale there for normal stormwater runoff. During an actual storm event, all bets are off. We have all native species being proposed. The areas that we have, we're not taking credit for the impervious driveway on the abutting property that will be removed in the end. We're just counting what's on the subject property, and we're meeting our mitigation requirements. I think that's about it. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You get the award for brief presentations today. Questions, comments? We've seen a number of these projects. Raise them up.
Raise them up, and this one's already raised quite a bit. I mean, it's at 12.4, and it needs to be at least at 14, so.
You ready, Bob?
I got a question about the lawn. That's right now, we have an existing Cape Cod lawn, no irrigation. That's going to remain as well?
I'm sure you're going to condition it to remain that way, so it will.
Right you are.
Good answer.
That's it?
That's it? Okay.
No, thanks.
So I have a question. You may not enjoy this question, Ted, but it's occurred to me that with a number of your projects, the planting, the mitigation is shown on your site plan.
Mm-hmm.
But where we would often see a mitigation planting plan from, a specialist, they would provide lots of additional information about how the plants are going to, how the soils are going to be prepared, how the plants will be planted, how they be cared for, and things like that.
Okay.
That's not, I don't believe that's in your, typically what comes with your submission.
No, but we can certainly
And
add
so,
some notes.
And also like who does the planting and so forth, and how the plant, in your case, who selected the plants? Well, I'm just out of curiosity.
Between the client and myself, we selected the
Just,
plants.
yeah, you and the client, okay. So I'm beginning to think that it might be good for you to include such
Sure.
with yours, so that we have a sense that they're being put in a way that is effective.
Mhm.
They're going to be good 3 years from now, taken care of, et cetera. Just to be, to make a level playing field with the other applicants who are submitting that kind of information for their projects.
We could put a condition in the order that the identification of the company who's going to do the installation be approved by the agent, so that Nikki has oversight of who it is and that she's comfortable with it.
Any thoughts on that, Nikki?
Evelyn?
Or Evelyn? She may be off tending to Evelyn, I'm not sure.
I was struggling to find
Yeah, that's fine.
what the symbols on the plantings stand for. Am I?
The symbol is in the list, which is just off the screen.
Oh, down below?
BP
Oh,
for
it's-
beach plum,
It's below in the next, there it is, BPCR, gotcha. Sorry, I was in.
CR, SRRC, H, S, and C.
Okay. Got it. Okay. That's it.
That's it.
I'm sorry, yes.
What you were thinking. Anyone else? Seems like a fairly straightforward project overall.
Zoning.
Oh,
Zoning has been filed, I believe we're on for next week.
next week,
Oh,
So we should be okay.
yep.
theoretically,
Right, but we should be okay to do it
yes.
for our next work
I
session.
agree, yes, I
The
agree.
22nd.
Especially given that this is another one of those,
Yeah.
which they've approved many of, right?
Oh, they didn't approve the one next door.
Well, they had trouble with the one next door ultimately approved. There were two around the corner that weren't approved. And
Okay.
so
Well,
They
we'll
do
take a chan-
scrutinize
We'll take a
these.
chance on you.
Yeah, what does the total height become? I mean, it's still within the 30-foot zoning?
Oh, yes, it's still within the 30-foot. We're
Okay.
maintaining
24.9.
conformity there.
Yeah.
But if we continue the work session, that'll be after the zoning hearing, so.
I agree, yeah.
If we have trouble there, then we can always
You just let
continue
us know
back.
right away.
We can stop writing.
Well, no,
Yeah, you can take our pens off the paper.
we'll watch.
I'll make a motion that we continue 27 Clamshell Drive to the work session on March 22nd, 2023 for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you
Deb.
much.
Next, we have 16 Black Duck Landing. Vincent and Joanne Silvestri, map 12B, parcel 1FB7. Expand existing patio area and construct a 14-foot by 16-foot swimming pool.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm John O'Reilly. With me today is Teresa Sprague from Blue Flax. And I believe Mr. Silvestri is also on the line and would be available to answer any questions that neither Teresa or I can't. You should be familiar with this property. We had just recently sought and obtained a certificate of compliance for some deck and patio work that was recently done in the last few years. Mr. Silvestri and his family is petitioning the commission to add about 6 feet of patio onto an existing patio directly behind the garage, construct a stairway from the patio down to existing grade, and then construct a 14 by 16 pool attached to the attached to the patio. All work is within existing lawn. There is no native vegetation or clearing that is necessary for the installation. We are not adding significant amount of grade to the area, and access will be from the east side of the dwelling from the driveway. We do have several resources here. We have a BVW that's adjacent to a river or a stream. We are showing the 50-foot buffer, the 100-foot buffer, the 100-foot riparian, and then the outer 200-foot riparian. All work is beyond the 50-foot buffer, and the pool is proposed to be beyond the 100-foot riparian zone. We've done some coverage calculations. We do meet the performance standard under the Rivers Act in that we are still below the 5,000 square feet that the lot is eligible to claim, given that it was created at a certain date. And Mr. Silvestri engaged Teresa and her firm, Blue Flax, to come up with a mitigation proposal. And I think that you'll see on the tabular values that we are providing an abundance of restoration work. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Teresa, and she could walk you through her plan. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Thanks, everybody. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flax Design here on behalf of the Silvestris. As mitigation for the proposed swimming pool and minor patio expansion, we are proposing a total of 7,431 square feet of mitigation, of which 6,731 square feet is invasive plant removal and restoration. Invasive coverage in the area shown in green on the plan varies from about 30% to 80% cover. The area to the eastern portion of the property is more heavily invaded than on the western side. We have a mix of bittersweet, honeysuckle, porcelain berry, border privet, multiflora rose, as well as significant amount of greenbrier, poison ivy, rough stem goldenrod, native but aggressive species. We are proposing, in addition to removing that invasive vegetation, removing an area of existing lawn and mulch that is a total of about 700 square feet, all of that within the 50-foot buffer to the bordering vegetated wetland. We're proposing to plant a total of 154 shrubs and 145 native ferns, so a mix of wetland appropriate bordering vegetated wetland appropriate vegetation, including summer sweet, red twig dogwood, winterberry viburnum, and dentatum, arrowwood viburnum, and viburnum nudum, possum haw viburnum, as well as cinnamon fern and lady fern within that area. There is an existing row of hydrangea that borders the proposed pool installation area and delineates the edge of the naturalized area. That was required under a previous order of conditions quite some years ago. The property owners planted those hydrangeas that were required by the Conservation Commission. They do delineate the naturalized buffer zone area from the typical landscape area within the aura. We are proposing to maintain those hydrangeas in that area. They've been there quite some time. They were required by a previous Conservation Commission.
Can I stop you? Can I stop you just for a moment, Teresa?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing you right. This Conservation Commission 6 or 7 years ago required hydrangeas to be planted in a resource area. Okay.
That is my understanding, that shrubs were required to be planted in that area to delineate the naturalized area from the upland portion, or I'm sorry, the aura, or the more developed portion of the lot, the typical landscape area, and that those hydrangea shrubs were approved as part of that planting.
Well, it just goes to show you how times change.
Exactly, yes. And my only reason for raising that is because I know that normally we would not propose to put hydrangeas or maintain hydrangeas in this area. But the homeowner does like the look of those hydrangeas. They're not, while they don't provide a significant amount of habitat value, they're not a detriment, they're not invasive. So we are proposing to leave that row of hydrangeas in that area because they are also doing a good job of delineating the upland, regularly disturbed mowed areas of the property from the naturalized areas within the 50-foot buffer zone towards the BBW. So with the invasive species removal, we're proposing to heavily plant that naturalized buffer zone, the native buffer zone within the 50 and part of it within the 100-foot buffer. There is an existing area of native shrubs that you see. It's kind of in white. You can see a spot elevation of 12.5 and 13. So we have with that removal of the mulch in the lawn, we have a good contiguous strip of native vegetation that's entirely protecting the 50-foot buffer zone. I do want to point out that there is still invasive vegetation located on the western portion of the property as you get out to Cedar Street. We're biting off a little bit here. There is certainly some more opportunity in the future to do some invasive plant removal in that area. We're using that existing footpath as sort of our cutoff line, our firewall that we've discussed in the past. So we'd be managing the invasive vegetation to the east of that existing footpath that's proposed to remain. We are going to run that footpath through just to allow some access and a small pathway through that area, mainly for maintenance, for us to get in and continue to do some follow-up invasive species management and maintain that area. But I'm happy to answer any questions about the proposed mitigation or invasive plant management and restoration work.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. Questions?
I have a question for us.
For us?
On the plan notes, the last one says follow-up invasive species management will be ongoing over the next 3 growing seasons. Do we want some kind of note that says it's going to go on longer than that? As they do for 3 growing seasons, are we doing it?
Well, I think that's,
Have we done that yet?
well, our COCs require that
Right.
they be taken care of for 3 years, and then they get their certificate. But we do also have relatively new language that says mitigation.
That's what
Mitigation,
we've done that yet.
yeah, mitigation is to be cared for forever.
Correct. So do we want that on the plan, or
That'll-
is that a part of the?
We'll put that on the order,
It'll be.
in the order.
And if I may, through the chair, our management plan does provide for ongoing follow-up management. So it is written into the narrative portion of the document that once we reach the level of control and reach a level of control, of course, we know eradication is not a word that we use with invasive species management, but our goal is to maintain 90 to 95% ongoing monitoring and rapid response after the order of conditions has expired. They've received their certificate of compliance is written into the plan. So it certainly would make sense to have that written into the order.
And we will. Other questions?
Teresa, I have a question on the hydrangeas. How are they watered right now? Or are they?
I am not sure. Perhaps that's Mr. Silvestri could answer that question if he's on the call. I am not sure. I do not believe there is an in-ground irrigation system on the site, but I am not certain of that.
I believe there actually is. I saw what appeared to be in-ground irrigation heads, flush heads in the lawn area next to the hydrangeas. But that's what that appeared to me, and maybe I was wrong, but that's what I thought I saw.
So by the hydrangea, no drip irrigation, and just.
I didn't look for a drip irrigation, I just noticed those heads.
I am not sure. I'm going to go back in some photos right now and look and see if I have any evidence of drip irrigation on the hydrangeas.
Also, the area that you say has existing native vegetation, that kind of oval area, what's in there again?
The existing native vegetation on site is mainly viburnum. Let me go through the land management plan momentarily, and I can answer that question for you. I believe it's covered in the existing conditions section of the property. We have red maple, airwood viburnum, clethra, high bush blueberry, winterberry, and American holly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No, I mean, you do have hydrangea within the NDZ as well.
Yeah, but apparently,
Through
the previous commission ordered them to be put, which is kind of mind-blowing, but.
I can shed some light on that.
Please.
Yeah, back in 2009, Mr. Silvestri and his family went through and added the garage that you see on the house, and then and then added a porch. The row of hydrangeas you see on this plan is the same row that was reflected on the 2009 plan. And I do remember the commission talking about the hydrangeas as being a good visual buffer or boundary for the Silvestris in heading towards. It wasn't the commission asking to be planted, they were already there.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make you feel a little bit better about your past commissions.
I do feel better.
But we had a filing in 2009, the hydrangeas were there, they were left. 2016, the patio was added, the hydrangeas were shown on the site plan, so the hydrangeas do have a history on the property.
Right, okay.
They are a visual border.
They are a visual border. So Teresa, between this property and the invasive management you're doing at number 42, this whole heavily invaded area, starting on the eastern edge of this, continuing, is going to be restored except for of course, the intervening property. I think it's going to make putting the mow strip on this eastern edge and doing invasive management in that 80%, because that is where it's most, and that's where it borders a heavily invaded area. That's where the invasion is likely to come from. So I think we'll make sure we put that in the order, that will be maintained, mow strip along the eastern boundary, and vigorous monitoring, rapid response.
But
I like that.
Are you proposing a mow strip, Teresa?
We are showing an area that would allow for that, but we could certainly define that very clearly on the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The pool, is it going to have an auto cover or what?
Yes.
And then when you said the deck, the pool will be attached to the patio, but the patio has steps going down, so is the pool being built up?
Yes. So the pool will be built up to the elevation of the patio that's there now.
Okay,
Not the
so-
deck. The patio is lower in profile than the existing deck on the back of the house.
So what is going around the edges of the pool? Is it a retaining wall? You know, what are you doing because the
It's a
pool is not in ground?
Sure, well, the top half of the pool will probably extend above the ground about 24 inches.
Okay,
And that would probably, it's going to be a concrete pool with probably either some texture sides or something like that to make it look a little bit better. But yeah, the pool is going to extend up to match up with the patio. It will have an automatic cover. And again, it's a 14 by 16 pool.
Yeah.
But does your site plan show a pool fence? Is that what I'm seeing there?
The pool has an automatic cover, so we don't need a pool fence.
But okay, well, there's something there.
That's a limit of work line, very bold
Oh,
line.
that's all that is, okay.
Yeah.
All right, no pool fence.
And that's just for the pool construction, the heavier, the excavation work.
thank you.
Anything else? I do have a question, Teresa. What's with the whole big area of ferns?
I think that the property owners had requested something of a little bit more of a ground cover layer in that particular area, just as a transition zone. So that's my understanding of how the ferns came to be in that area.
So they're meant to be walkable?
No,
Oh.
there is not meant to be any walking in that
Oh,
area.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in your presentation, you mentioned the overall square feet of mitigation, then you mentioned a figure which was invasive removal, which was the vast majority of it. I just want to make sure I heard the numbers right.
Yes, that's correct. 6,731 square feet is the total invasive plant management area, and the area of lawn and mulch to be removed is 700 square feet.
Okay. Oh, right time. So, any other questions? Do we have any, doesn't sound like we have any, we've asked for anything, have we? I can't remember that we have. In which case,
Yeah, just a mow strip.
yeah. You're going to give us something that more clearly indicates the existence of the mow strip, yeah.
Yes, well, I'll make sure that that's clearly noted and marked on the plan.
Okay.
Make a motion that we continue 16 Black Duck Landing to the next work session on March 22nd, 2023 for an order of conditions.
Martin, second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl. And I vote aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have 0 Orleans Road, Jackknife Beach, Town of Chatham, Department of Natural Resources, Ted Keon, the Living Shoreline Restoration.
And before we begin, we are getting short on time. So
I totally get that.
we're gonna pay attention to this, starting now.
Not a problem. For the record, Trey Ruthven with Sustainable Coastal Solutions, and with me today is Seth Wilkinson from Wilkinson Ecological Design. We're really just here to kind of follow up on some of the questions from our last hearing. If they can switch over the screen.
I have a presentation just to answer those questions, and I would suggest, as we're going through them, if we have questions, just let's hit them right off the bat as we're going through them, just to keep it quick and hopefully short and
As briefly as you can, thank you.
on time. So this is just the overall plan from last time, and we'll just go right past that. So one of the questions last time was, what would our guardrails look like? So we had some discussions with the town after our last hearing. The town has been using the guardrail similar to the one on the right, which is a 8x10 post. It's actually been used down by the fish pier. This one's a little bit smaller. The one at the fish pier is using concrete footings, and we're removing all of that. But this is what we're currently proposing. This will also come up when Ted brings the master plan for Jackknife Beach to the commission. And our suggestion is that when we condition this, that we say whatever our final guardrail design is be run by conservation agent to finalize it, but it will be something very similar to this. It'd be just slight changes in wood dimensions if there were any changes.
Okay.
The next question had to do with our vegetation communities. You will see in Area 3, we've made some slight modifications. We had a project team meeting after our hearing, and CZM had asked us to add some woody vegetation, which we did. So we now have a marsh elder and a groundsel tree added to it in small quantities, 5% and 2%. This was, well, not the additions, but the overall plan was included in our filing and on the plans. But as part of this, we made this diagram to kind of explain and help clarify what we're planting, where we're planting, and at what quantities. The next question had to do with sea level rise and how we are incorporating that. With the project as designed, obviously, the crest of our project at roughly plus 5 feet is roughly in line with annual high tide. So when we're talking about sea level rise, it's a bit different than some more coastal stabilization projects where you're worried about storm surge. Here you can see with the variations in blue, that's mean high water. So you can see as we go from now kind of outwards, we're keeping up with mean high water as it increases. But again, we're not trying to protect the site using, our restored marsh as shore protection or things like that. We're just trying to put it in a set elevation so the marsh communities can move landward. As we start getting further out in the projections, the town's going to have larger issues, which we talked about last time, of how do we utilize Jackknife Beach? Because if the parking lot's getting wet on a daily basis at high tide, that's going to change that conversation. And so what we've sort of set up is for that conversation as it happens is once it becomes that Jackknife Beach can't be a public recreation spot, they can actually use the parking lot to continue that elevation increase up to the coastal bank and actually keep salt marsh going potentially. That's obviously a larger question for the community as a whole. But that was kind of the design considerations as we went into this and trying to set elevations, how to deal with this up until that point. The next question had to do with the nourishments, as we're calling them, and how we're going to re-nourish them. So obviously, the nourishment areas that we're including, and this is Area 1 that's outlined in red, is very different than a beach nourishment on an open coastline. In Area 1, we will have some erosion immediately adjacent to Route 28 Bridge, where we have boaters entering kind of at that little beach. And we're expecting that. The goal, again, is for that sediment to be in place and actually naturally kind of feed the marsh, but actually keep the natural sediments within the system. As we move up to the next, which is more of the parking lot area where we're talking about raising it, we're not expecting to lose much quantity of what we're putting in. What I see being more of an issue is that we're going to get divots from parking, from transportation, and that'd be something DPW could bring in small quantities, and when I'm talking small quantities, I'm talking several yards, to fill those holes so we don't actually end up with ponding, similar to what we already have now, where we have ponding areas. But again, the goal is to prevent the ponding from occurring next to the salt marsh, where we have drowning or trampling, and kind of the issues we've had now. But again, it's not like a nourishment recycle like a typical beach where we're expecting the beach profile to, equilibrate, sediment to move offshore, cross-shore movement, longshore movement. This is entirely different. This is a small feeder to feed the salt marsh from, the edge of the marsh up to the coastal bank. So those are the questions you guys had. So I tried to keep this quick relative to last time, which I know went on for a little while.
All right, there you go, thank you. Yeah, excellent. Questions?
I have a question. While the work begins and proceeds forward, will you be putting up any temporary fence before the guardrail is installed?
We would, the plan is not to put up fencing per se. We will likely put up oak stakes to demarcate where we're working, which would be fairly obvious because we'll have all the materials in place. We might want to fence off the area where we bring materials in, but the goal is not to bring all the materials in and store them in the parking lot. The goal would be to bring them in as we need them, but we might have a day or two's worth of materials. So on the landward side of the parking lot, we might demarcate an area just so people don't walk through that. But the goal is not to demarcate within the salt marsh, where we're working. It'd just be, there'd be more oak stakes or survey stakes with elevations. So as we're planting and setting elevations, we're going to the correct elevations as opposed to a typical construction fence where it's, demarcating the area, and that wouldn't really be appropriate for this resource area.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I have a couple quick questions. So I understand that part of the point of the, we'll call it nourishment for lack of a better word, but the application of the sand and the current to the east side of the CRM in the current parking and roadway areas, to elevate that as well, so the whole thing. Do you have an estimate of the volume of initial application that's going to be required for that? How much, are you raising that by about a foot or so overall?
Let me go to the cross section. It'd be actually easier to show you. Oh, actually, nope.
It's a maximum of 2 feet.
Can I zoom in, actually?
There you go.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah, there.
so we have the existing marsh, we have the cobble reinforced marsh. The elevation increase immediately next to the cobble reinforced marsh is roughly 2 feet, and then it pays across as we go out. I believe I did calculate it in the NOI. I don't have the volume off the top of my head.
You don't?
I don't, I'm sorry.
It's in the NOI, I can find it, I just.
And again, the goal for nourishing the parking lot, as we're calling it, is to bring it up, stop water ponding, provide a natural sediment source.
Will you be compacting it when you first apply it so that when vehicles begin driving over it?
That's been an ongoing discussion of what we're going to be allowed to do. And at the moment, we're not discussing compacting it. What we're talking about is part of, as we go through the process, we're going to have to show to DEP that we're using native sediments. And so we have sediment samples that are being sent to the lab, and we're doing a compatibility analysis. And so the compatibility analysis will look at percentages of each grain size going through, and we're going to have to match that within a few percentile coming through. Luckily, looking at the coastal bank and where we've kind of taken samples, there is more gravel in that range. And so in those areas, we'll have more gravel, which will allow for driving. I think it's going to be hard for us to get a permit allowing us to compact a parking lot because it is in a resource zone, which makes this a funny sort of project. Practically, after the fact, I think that'll be an ongoing discussion amongst DPW and conservation about what we can do as we see how that kind of evolves and works. But the goal at the moment is not to compact it.
Okay.
And especially when we get down to Resource Area 1, which is next to the bridge, there's obviously no compaction in there because there's no need.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
And this, so the initial application goes all the way across from the edge of the CRM all the way to the toe of the bank?
Correct.
And-
Well, actually to elevation 5.
5?
Yes.
Which appears to be about the toe.
It's we're close to the toe of the bank.
Okay, and then all the way up to where your line shows, yeah, to the end of the project. And is that the parking lot? What's beyond that? Why is,
Beyond that, the parking lot continues for a little ways, and there's the dune system.
Yeah.
That area is actually being incorporated right now into the town's master plan. So we've mapped the area we're nourishing to match where the CRM is going to be, so we don't end up with that gap where we have a 2-foot, kind of raise where the CRM coming in, and then the parking lot being lower, so we'd actually pool water. So at the current end, if the town does not get anywhere with the master plan per se, by the time this comes, we would just naturally taper it out. So it'd be a smooth transition into existing grade.
taper it down?
But that project is ongoing, and it will be matching us in pace and speed. So likely the goal would be, they're looking at doing some dune enhancement at the far end to bolster those dunes, and so we would just flow directly into the dune system and the nourishments they're planning on at that location.
That makes sense. What is the current timeline in terms of when work starts on this?
Well, once we leave conservation, we obviously start the state and federal permitting process, and if we're lucky, that'll be a year.
Right, so about a year from now, spring of 2020.
And we have a time of year restriction with DMF, and so that would potentially, so that'd be the spring of 2024. At the earliest, it could be the fall of 2024 that construction could proceed, and that's assuming we have an efficient permitting process with the state and feds, which lately has not been the
What
case.
federal, do you need a 404?
We do.
Oh, okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
So we're not going to be the ones holding it up.
That's it for me, thank you.
I've been still a little fuzzy about the word nourishment being used here in the
There's
roadway, shall I say.
This is where we don't have a, well, being a resource area, we're not allowed just to fill within a V zone. And so looking at it, we were debating how to deal with the storage of water problem. And actually, when we were working with our team partners, CZM said, well, it's a beach, you can nourish it. And I said,
Oh, I see.
and then I started looking at what our grain sizes were, and I said, oh, well, this will be difficult, but this is actually a practical solution of doing this, and it, feeds our need to actually build a sediment source in for the salt marsh so it can actually naturally accumulate sediments and, naturally raise on its own. So in a sense, it's an odd use, but the use is similar to what a nourishment would be and why it's, put into the coastal zone of, bolstering the littoral system, providing natural sources of sediment. It's just odd that we're also talking about it being a parking lot, which just happens to be because of where this is located and at the elevation it's located at. So yes, I agree. I wish there was a better word for it. I just don't have one.
We just
Or we
have to call it nourishment, but we really can't call it nourishment, so it's.
We've had these discussions for months and months going on, and a round of like,
So, when we were at the site visit, you talk about that path that goes out, the pedestrian path that goes.
Correct.
You can see a little notch there. And I think you said nourishment's going to sort of go through there.
so the nourishment, again, if we picture we're coming up 2 feet naturally around the CRM, and whether we're talking at the end of the parking lot or even there, what we're going to do is just naturally taper it off to meet existing elevations, because what we don't want is a pile of sand next to the salt marsh just dumping. And so, again, where we're not actually augmenting the salt marsh elevation, which is nowhere where there's existing salt marsh, we're literally building salt marsh from the edge of the existing salt marsh landward. Those areas, we would be meeting at a grade and then extending or adding nourishment along the pathway as we go up to meet the CRM. So the goal is not to cover over the existing salt marsh in any form or function.
Your goal is not to nourish.
Our goal is not to nourish in that area. It will
With the
naturally.
nourishment. Okay, I get it, sure.
Encouraging natural nourishment.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. As I said, this will be a project that we'll all be looking at, and it'll be an evolution even after it's constructed, through.
It's going to be an art form, I think.
Well, we're hoping it's successful, but also leading to success in other projects, whether it's Pleasant Bay or in the larger area around. And, the one thing that's been very beneficial through this whole project is learning from projects in Chesapeake or in the Carolinas and seeing how different things work, realizing, if we add more oyster shell in this context, we'll have more success with the rib mussel. So
You've indicated there's a bit of an experiment on several fronts. I get that. I just am concerned about what you apply to that roadway, if it's not just sand.
Well,
And it's going to wind up in the marsh, and that's not good.
It's got to be compatible.
Well, it's got to be beach compatible, otherwise we won't get a nourishment permit.
Okay.
So
If
it
it's
will be
sand-
it'll be a mixture of, looking what's out there and having pulled, it'll be a mixture of sand all the way from, silts to fine sands, coarse sands. There's gravel going everywhere from, the number 4 sieve, which is 4.75 millimeters, up to, there's even some stones that we've found that are, plus past the 6-inch range, which then hops into the cobble range. We're actually not looking at putting a whole lot of cobble in the parking lot because that wouldn't be really beneficial for movement across it either. So we're going to look at the grain sizes of what we find out there and mimic those. And I realize, and this is, again, a conversation that we're having lots of conversations about with Ted and Bob, going, how does this work and how is this going to work? And
Yeah.
so far, we've been confident that I think with the gravel percentages, we're seeing that we can make a surface that is natural yet drivable.
Okay, all right. And I trust that you'll all arrive at a mutually agreeable solution to that.
If we don't, we won't ever get past the
You
state and
won't, you
federal
won't get the
departments.
project, right. Okay. Any other questions? No? I pushed us over time here, so. Did I hear you volunteer to do the OSC? You're doing it, so you have everything you need to write it? Think so?
Yeah, I think so.
You know where to go if you.
So as an offer, we realize this is a unique project for the commission, and not to take over the process, but we could offer up other orders of conditions or other conditions that we've had at other projects where we're incorporating this and provide it to the commission, where you can take it, edit it, keep it, throw it out. I mean, use it as you need, and if it's useful, it's a tool, and if it's
Yes.
not,
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
I just didn't want to step on any toes of,
No,
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
whatever you have, we'll look at it.
and again, if there's, I realize the hearing would close at that point, but yeah, it can be happy to answer questions along the way.
Yeah, we don't close the hearing until we get to the work sessions.
Okay, so,
If you guys come there and we still have, are there any, we can always address things at the last second if necessary.
all right, and if Nicole has questions along the way, as she's pulling it all together, as always, yeah, feel free to reach out.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we're ready.
Make a motion that we continue 0 Orleans Road, Jackknife Beach, to the work session on March 22nd, 2023, for an order of conditions.
Latin second.
Roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
Cheryl? And I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the final notice of intent is for 1070 Orleans Road, John and Mary Boyle, map 10K parcel 23A2, proposed landscaping and construction of a boardwalk.
Good afternoon, David Little representing the Boyles. I believe Joel Court and Miles Connor from Parterre Garden Services are attending remotely, as well as Mary Boyle. So we've made a few changes resulting from the last hearing. Joel went back to the applicants, and after they heard the discussion of the regarding the boardwalk/timber stair, they've decided to go back to what presently exists now. So we have provided you with a plan just to replace the dug-in timber steps and stairs with new dug-in timber steps and stairs at grade, which will eliminate a significant amount of the questions that were involved with the boardwalk. I believe it will also eliminate zoning board of appeals. And additionally, Joel went back to his plan with the foundation plantings that you brought up. All plantings proposed are now native for the entire project. And Miles, on sheet 13 of 26 of the land management plan, has now proposed some plantings to try and restore the marsh that Bob had suggested at the earlier hearing. He's proposing plugs for that. So I did provide you with plans from Parterre. What I didn't provide you with were plans from Ryder and Wilcox that reflected all this, which I'm going to hand out now. Last week we had staff. One person had diverticulitis, another had a detached retina, and a third is having his hip replaced. So I don't have people that are helping me out right now. So forgive me for this late addition, but it's all reflected on the plans that Parterre submitted. And welcome to my
Let me tell you about my week.
Yeah.
So, on our plan, we have shown a section through the boardwalk that Joel designed. We've shown a typical section detail of how the timber steps and risers will be installed with gravel in between them, which will intercept any storm water that's coming down the slope. So we're going to be eliminating the existing stormwater impacts that do go down the path. And I did add some typical construction notes for the timber stairs on my plan as well. So I apologize for bringing that in at the 11th hour, but since I'm the last one here, maybe you can show me a little kindness. Okay, a little. That would be my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Joel and Miles are here if you have anything with respect to Parterre.
All right, thank you. Do you guys want to say anything, or?
No, it sounds like David has summarized everything that we did on our end. We took the opportunity to use a native plant palette, which is kind of exciting for us to, explore this more ornamental foundation plantings, but using a purely native plant palette. So it was exciting for me to learn from our ecological designer all the opportunities that there were for that.
You're welcome.
Can we record this and broadcast it?
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you. I wish this happened more. That traditional landscaping firms, I hope, would move faster into this arena.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I will add that it was sort of an opportunity for us to educate the homeowners too about the benefits of going native. Far less inputs into the garden, and it did take a little bit of convincing that it was still going to be a beautiful garden, but we have arrived there with them, and they're excited about it.
Very good, thank you. Good job. Yeah, there'll be a lot of wildlife to observe, no less watering to do, no pesticides needed, no fertilizing needed. It's all good.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Once it's done, can we do feature it in a public education special?
In the Chronicle.
Well, we'd like to promote it as.
We do.
We do.
A Chronicle article.
Yeah.
I'm not writing it.
Let's keep that in mind. It's all said and done. If we could be provided photographs, for example, of how it all looks, with some smiling owners, preferably. And
Yeah.
this is how,
That's how change happens.
your NDZ could look this way as well.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anything else? Bob?
Yeah, a few questions, David. The shed, did you ever find out about that?
I did not. I could not find out. I don't know if it was ever permitted. Can I work on that a little harder between now and the work session?
Sure. I don't know if Nikki could do some research as well. I don't know.
Nikki could see what
Yeah,
she
we
sees.
can, Crystal and I can look into it.
Okay, and the other thing was the kayak rack. I don't see, is that on here?
No,
At the base of the stairs?
If they do put the kayak somewhere, it's going to be, as you're going down the stairway to the first kind of, the steps to the first landing where the path goes over to the right, they'll be over there somewhere. We haven't really addressed that. But I can between now and the work session if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be wonderful, yeah. We generally don't want them on the ground.
I thought I covered everything, but
Because it limits the
I can always
growing of
count on you, Bob,
vegetation.
to keep me to the task.
And the other thing I had was, it was kind of, we addressed it, but it was kind of an afterthought. There's also a healthy stand of English ivy on the west end of the property. I know you're going to be removing the English ivy from around the trees.
You mean by the shed?
No, on the west end towards 28.
Miles, what are you proposing there?
Well, I'm sorry, that's the east end, right?
East, yes.
West maybe.
One of the two.
Closer to 28.
Closer to 28. I believe Miles.
That would be closest to the road, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have proposed that area for remediation and removal of ivy along that edge. I don't know if I have the ability to share a screen or not.
You should, and you do.
Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes.
So according to the plan, you're speaking of this area?
Yes.
Yeah, so that area is proposed for ivy removal. And I believe, and this is the image of the existing area, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and Joel also, I believe, has additional insight in terms of planting within this area. Is that correct, Joel?
There's plans for a row of American holly along the top of that bank. And this may be an issue with, in my scope, I don't have a planting plan for that bank. Miles, in your eco set, is there not a planting plan for that slope?
There is not a planting plan for that slope in particular. Let me go just down a couple pages here. Sorry for the interruption. So that would be this particular slope here.
Yeah.
So we have not included a planting plan for that particular area. If the ivy is removed, we would have to consider additional plantings for that area. We did focus in and around, as you can see here, closest to the house and along the coastal bank. This is also sheet 13, which David was referring to. There was a concern at the last hearing about any disturbance along the base of this slope, along the footpath. And so we did add some language associated with those areas of disturbed soil along the salt marsh will be seeded with New England coastal salt tolerant grass mix. And also we're included 2-inch properly spaced landscape plugs of eastern salt marsh aster, as well as lavender and cordgrass. Just for reference.
Just to add a little bit more color to that bank on the side of the house, I think our eco team did an inventory of that bank, obviously, as was shown in the previous plan. Whereas the restoration plantings that we did just address the areas that are shown on this plan, knowing that the area of restoration plantings was going to exceed what would be needed for mitigation. Is the commission, I understand you would want to see that English ivy removed. Would it be a requirement in order to do the landscape improvements that we're talking about?
On the west of the house?
Yeah, that image that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you called for it to be removed. Even if it's just seeded, you know, with a conservation mix, that would be fine as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's, you know, it's definitely invaded that whole area, and it'd be a benefit to the ecosystem if it were removed.
No question, it would be a benefit. I'm sure you agree to that. Whether it's required is a whole different question. You provided a goodly amount of mitigation with your project, so I don't know if personally I can say that we would require it.
But at the very least, the ivy's being removed. We're going to have bare ground. I understand where Bob's coming from, that something has to go back in, because the LMP does commit to removing the ivy in that area, so
Yes.
there has to be something that goes in.
Right, there was the question, I think I asked it last time, is all the ivy in the property coming out? And I thought the answer was yes.
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay. We can certainly amend the land management plan to include restoration plantings of that slope as well.
Yeah, seeding is fine.
Just seeding.
Or seed.
Yeah, it wouldn't, I think, necessarily need to be a full-blown planting plan unless your clients wanted to go that way. But at the very least, if it were, you know, a fescue,
Right.
native fescue, it's better than ivy by a long shot.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, just either a grass seed, and then obviously when someone goes out to do the COC site visit, they'll see that it's, you know, planted or revegetated. But if you want to do native plantings, shrubs, trees, any of that kind of stuff, that would be fine as well. Just make sure it's native, and then give us some sort of invoice or planting plan or something if you go the shrub tree route. But as long as it's seeded and with a native grass mix, that'd be fine.
I'll have that discussion with the homeowners and see which route they want to take with that.
Thank you.
There's always the possibility of a phase 2 project too, you know.
Our time's up.
Okay.
Wow, called himself out.
Well, I remember when Buck Upson was in here, he had a kitchen timer.
Yep.
I don't know why it took me so long to think of this, but,
Let's continue it to next week.
yeah, I think so.
Please.
You're going to do a little work on the shed. Nikki's going to look at shed. Kayak rack you're going to think about. And other than that,
That's it, pretty close.
Okay, we're very close. Thank you.
very close. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for cooperating with us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
I'll make a motion that we continue 1070 Orleans Road to the next week's hearing, March 8th, 2023.
Latin second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise.
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bang.
All right, we already did the COC, so that's all we have on the agenda. I don't have any unforeseen items. We have a couple enforcement orders coming probably next week that you'll see, but other than that, and I think I'll be in person finally
Yay.
starting next Wednesday. I was supposed to be there today, but
Good news.
didn't work out.
So I have a quick question, Nikki. Relating to the request I made by email about getting the full copy of the regulations on the aura onto the website, as well as the bylaw, which we don't have on the website, and I just need them there so I can finish the memo asking for town council assistance on the regulation update. I want to get that off
So,
my desk.
yeah, I've been looking and looking since I started to find a full copy of the regulations, and I can't find one.
We
I
do
don't-
have the one that Bob
I have
sent.
a copy, but I don't have anything.
I don't think a clean copy exists.
Don't think one exists, but the one that Bob sent with the photocopied photograph of the missing page 71, we'll just have to do. It's just so, apparently, nobody ever reads them.
Let's not say that.
Yeah. But it took me a long time to realize there was a missing page, because the text does not tell you that. I mean, the text flows until you go, something's not right here. But at any rate, I want to get that off my desk and over to you guys. So I guess, what is the process if we're asking for assistance? Do we send it to you, and then you send it to Bob, and he sends it to Jill, and she pushes the button for town council assistance?
Yeah, he has to ask for permission he has to do like a request to use town council.
Okay. All right.
But the point of what Janet's asking for is to allow council access to all the documents that he'll need to look at.
Right, and that's just, I'm trying to find a way to link them without using the Dropbox, which is not great for him.
That'll be difficult, I
Yeah,
think.
right. So the publicly available versions.
Or printing everything out, which, is last resort.
Ah,
Okay, yep.
thanks.
Motion to adjourn.
I'm second.
Roll call vote, Mary.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Janet.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Elise. Cheryl. I will vote aye. Thank you all for speed meeting.